Welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Thursday, everybody. We are one day closer to Notre Dame kicking off against the Boston College Eagles this Saturday, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ESPN inside of Alumni Stadium. Notre Dame's first trip out there since COVID. This should be a fun one this weekend, Bryan. And today we have an awesome show coming your guys' way. We're splitting this up to a couple different parts. Like always, like we always do on Thursday, we're going to talk our game predictions, going to give score predictions, how we see this game playing out. We're going to talk some game wreckers. Part two, now that the playoff discussion is alive and well, we're less than a week away from the first college football playoff rankings coming out. We're going to give a little Notre Dame rooting guide. And there's about 8 games that we're going to discuss that will impact Notre Dame in some way. And then
a lot more than 8.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than 8.
Well, a lot more than 8, that's for sure. A lot more than 8. But in part 3 of today's show, we're going to be going over some college football predictions. So this is slowly working its way up the ranks to being one of mine and Brian's favorite segments of the week. We can sit down and just talk some ball, man. It's going to be a good day.
Yeah, you were just counting the 8 of the Notre Dame opponent games. There's another 6 that are behind that one that are national games that we're going to talk about today, which I can't wait, man, for that, Trev. And can't wait for this game on Saturday either, man. Your first trip out to Boston, that'll be awesome. So really, actually, I enjoy, I think it's Keenan, Alumni Stadium, right? Yeah, I was going to say Keenan. That's somewhere else. Alumni Stadium, and I've been there twice. It's a really nice place to watch a ball game. So I think you're going to enjoy that. And hopefully you'll get the chance to see Notre Dame put on a show. And that's what we're going to discuss today because, you know, Trev, let's just dive right in to this prediction show and to this matchup. It's a big game for Notre Dame. You know, I mean, it is. It's your last chance to make a big statement before the first playoff rankings come out. And the first playoff rankings aren't the end-all be-all. You can certainly continue to improve your standing, but the higher you rank, the easier it is for you to climb up to where you need to be, which for Notre Dame, you're obviously your minimum goal is to not only make the playoff, but also to host. And then the higher you can be seated in that range, the better. And that's what a lot of our discussion will be about. You know, so when we talk about the rooting guide isn't just about what games matter for Notre Dame to make the playoff. That's not the ultimate goal, in my opinion. If you're Notre Dame, you're hoping to, as a Notre Dame fan, Notre Dame players shouldn't be worried about this because they can't control any of this. Yeah. They just need to control going out and whooping BC. But it's about, you know, what's going to happen in these other games to get higher seeded. But for the Notre Dame side, and when it comes to the BC predictions, all they can control is this part of it, is what do you do in this moment. So we're going to have some fun with the rooting guide and breaking down the national games and all that kind of stuff. But for the Notre Dame players, it's just about this team, Boston College, and going out there and proving that, hey, we're still an ascending team. We're a team that you look at us and say, hey, yeah, we were here in September and we were here in October. You know, here's where we were in September. Here's where we were in October. But now we're getting November. We're up here and we're reaching our peak. And Boston College is your first chance to kind of show who that team is going to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm excited to go out and watch it firsthand in person. I'll get to relay some information to you guys back here at home, so I'm very excited to be out there. But yes, I agree. This is going to be a very important game for Notre Dame, and this is really going to be the launching pad that serves for how they're going to be the rest of the month of November. This is going to be the foundation that they can continue to build upon. They're coming out of their second bye week. First bye week, you only had one game of film and game experience for some new players. Now it's really time to go back to the drawing boards in certain areas and make some adjustments. So this is definitely going to be fun to dive into. But Bryan, I'll get us kicked off here with both of our predictions. And like we do every week, we give our score prediction and then talk about how we see this game playing out. And I have Notre Dame winning this one 51-10. Look, I respect every opponent that Notre Dame plays. I'm hoping that Notre Dame has a higher level of respect for Boston College than what I do and how I've had conversations about them this week. And I think I've been respectful of this opponent. But at the end of the day, Boston College is not a good football team. They're just not. They have good individual pieces, but this is a game that shouldn't be overly close. We're talking about a team that beat NC State by 29, beat Arkansas on the road by 43. That was Notre Dame's last away game. They won by 43 points on the road down in the SEC. I have them winning by 41 in this game against Boston College, a team that's currently 1-7, and unfortunately hasn't really been close to winning another game outside of beating Fordham in their season opener 66-10, which that does mean that I have Notre Dame covering. Right now, the FanDuel spread is still 28.5 points. So I have Notre Dame covering. But look, how I see this one playing out, I don't see this being overly close. Every week I talk about, it could be back and forth in the first half, and Notre Dame pulls away late. I think the closest that this game is going to be is at the opening kickoff, if I'm being honest. Notre Dame just doesn't, or Boston College just doesn't have the horses in all three phases to compete with Notre Dame. And if they come out and just play to their standard, and I'm not expecting perfection. This isn't if Notre Dame reaches their peak, they win 51-10. They didn't allow NC State
to win by 60 if they do that, Trev.
Yeah, man. I mean, they didn't allow NC State to score 10. They didn't allow Boise State to score 10. And they barely allowed Arkansas to get over 10. Excuse me. And those are three teams that I believe are better than Boston College. I think that this is going to be I don't think this is going to be overly close. Notre Dame has a history of performing well out of bye weeks. You go back to last year, they beat Stanford 49-7 out of the bye, and then Florida State 52-3 out of their 2 bye weeks. And then even in this year, the offense and special teams played well against Texas A&M. And I don't think the defense replicates the performance that they did against Texas A&M. If they do, we have a lot bigger issues than Notre Dame just not winning 51-10. There's a lot bigger issues at hand. So I think that this is a strong team out of the bye. I don't see it being overly close at any point. I have Notre Dame winning this one 51-10, Brian.
Trev, let me ask you this question. What is the thing that you're going to want to look for early in the game that's going to tell you, okay, this is going to be what I think it's going to be? Like, is there something besides just Notre Dame scores on 4 plays, but is there something that you're looking forward to seeing the first couple possessions that say, okay, this team is ready to rock and roll and dominate this game? And then, which, as we've talked all week, how you perform in this game is going to really set the tone for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, offensively, I just want to see them come out with a mentality like it's a faceless opponent. It's not a mystery of what Boston College's defense is. It just isn't. Now, I want this team to come out focused, aggressive, dominating the line of scrimmage. I want to see Mike Denbrock willing to call up some deep shots early for CJ Carr, not expecting, an opening play against Purdue outcome. I want to see them switch up some tempos, utilize some motion. I want to see this offense look like they're getting ready to play USC or Arkansas on the road, or Texas A&M or Miami. I don't want to, Notre Dame could very easily come out and run inside zone and duo all game and win by double digits. But that's not what I want to see from this group. And then on defense,
it sounds so disrespectful to say that about Boston College, but it's absolutely true. I mean, man. And it's not just that Boston College isn't good. It's just that's how good this Notre Dame team is, and BC is struggling. I mean, this is a very good Notre Dame football team, very talented Notre Dame football team. But it just, hearing that come out of your mouth, Trev, it's like, God, that just sounds so like, Homer talk. You know what I mean? But it's like, but it isn't. Like, that's how much better Notre Dame is than this Boston College team right now. And it really is.
And for a lot of my conversations around what I want to see and how I see this game playing out, when we get into the game records conversation, it's more of an indictment of Notre Dame than it is Boston College, truthfully. I've been saying it. We've been saying it since the start of the season. We said it in the preseason. I think Notre Dame is a top 5 team in the country talent-wise. And over the last month and a half, they've been playing like a top 5 team. Their resume just isn't top 5. But that's what I want to see from the offense. Defensively, you have to remain aggressive, because this is the side of the ball where they do have pieces that can hurt you. Lewis Bond can hurt you. Reed Harris can hurt you. Turbo Richard can hurt you. So this isn't one where the defense can come out and drop and play off cover 3 and, be lackadaisical in their pass rush. You have to come out and play aggressive. You have to replicate the mindset that you did against, Boise State and NC State and USC at times. Remaining aggressive and then being fundamentally sound, no blown coverages, things like that are what I want to see from this defense, because a lot of the implications that we're going to see in this game are going to carry us forward, for talking points for Notre Dame as they get into the remaining 4 games. So if I'm breaking it down into both sides, Brian, that's what I'll be looking for. And then special teams, just execute. Just execute, man.
Yeah. Well, so here's my prediction, Trev. I've been, obviously always back and forth on this. You want to put some thought into it, so it's not a surprise that I've been a little back and forth on this. But I'm everything you said, I agree with. Notre Dame's the better team. They're the more dominant team. They're gonna win this game relatively convincingly. I just need to see the offense really kind of put it back together. We've seen now 3 games in a row where the offense is kind of sputtered out of the gate and, it hasn't been great. And second half, they kind of put the game away a little bit. I need to see this offense really come out humming. If the offense comes out humming in this game and the new look O-line is playing great, the receivers are fresh, the CJ's doing what he can do, and then if all those things are happening, obviously the run game's obviously going to get going. I could see my prediction being the score at halftime. I'm going 45-7. That's my score prediction. Just because I think it'll be a game where until I see the offense can kind of do what we talk about, which is start fast, where maybe they don't necessarily bury Boston College right away, and it's a 17-0 game at halftime, and then the second half they kind of put Boston College away. I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see this thing be over quick. If the offense comes out humming, it could be that could be the score at halftime. I mean, seriously, it could be 45-10 at halftime. It was 42-13 against Arkansas, and as you mentioned, I think Arkansas is a better team than Boston College. And that's what my hope is this team has tended to play pretty well on the road under Marcus Freeman the last couple seasons. And they just seem to kind of have that when we are away from home and it's just us, and you've kind of got that natural us against the world type of mindset, this team tends to play pretty good. This season, we've seen an up and down performance on the road. Obviously, the first game against Miami, they didn't play that great. First game of the year. I don't know how much I want to put into that. About a month later, they head to Arkansas and absolutely dominate. And then this will be their first road game since then. But, we saw it last year too. The offense came out humming against USC last season. Neutral site game, but away from home against Army, they dominate. Neutral site game away from home against Navy, they dominate. Road game against Georgia Tech was a little bit up and down sloppy, but it was 31-7 with a couple minutes left in the game. And then obviously Purdue, they won 66-7. Texas A&M was a convincing victory against a really good team. Stanford, they dominated Stanford. So, you got to go all the way back to Clemson in 2023. And I just feel like since that game, this team has been a really dangerous road opponent. And so they're certainly capable of having the kind of dominant performance we're talking about. But I kind of think the game will be either where I'm at, like 45-7, 45-10, or it'll look more like Purdue last year. Like that's kind of how I see this, playing out, Trev, where I expect a little bit of sloppiness early from the offense, and then they just roll the last 2.5 quarters. That's where my 45-7 comes from. But honestly, the reason I think it could look like Purdue last year is because BC this year is better than Purdue last year. There's no doubt about that. But I also think this Notre Dame team is a lot better than it was when they played Purdue last year. So I could certainly see it. And that was also a road game. I could see this being a game where Notre Dame, has this, hey, we've got a little bit of a chip on our shoulder. Like we feel doubted. The fact that you don't have us as a top 10 team, we think we're an elite team. Whatever the reasoning for this team kind of having a bit of a chip on their shoulder is, if they come out with that kind of chip, that kind of fire, not to answer the question I asked you, that's the big thing for me, is I want to see this team come out playing hard and fast and just really taking it to BC in all phases. If they do that, Trev, this game could look like Arkansas at halftime. Like 42-7, 42-3, something like that, and then really put the thing away in the second half and pop on a couple extra scores in the second half, 2-3 extra scores in the second half. It could be that. And that's really where I was leaning all week, Trev, is kind of that, 63-10 type of prediction. But then I start getting back into the film and looking at the numbers, and I'm like, okay, I just need to see the Notre Dame offense come out fast and start fast, something they haven't done since the Arkansas game. That's why I tamped down my score just a little bit, but I expect it to be a beatdown. I think the defense is going to completely overwhelm Boston College. If they don't, I'll be a little disappointed. Even though that side of the ball has a lot of talent, their offensive line struggles, and this defense is playing at a high level. And, we talked about even the USC game, they gave up 24 points and 300-plus passing yards. it was a significantly better performance than what Notre Dame did against USC a year ago. And that was with 5 blown coverages in the game. You know what I mean? So I just think this defense in a lot of ways is playing at a high level. And I don't know that BC can do the things schematically and tempo-wise that could give Notre Dame problems. I mean, USC really hurt Notre Dame early with their tempo, but that's who USC is. It's a natural progression for them to speed things up the way that they did. I don't know if BC has that. So that's why I look at this and say, I don't see how Boston College can really do enough offensively to make this a game. I think it's going to be a blowout. It's just, it really just comes down to, for me, is how quickly does the Notre Dame offense get rolling in this game?
Are all 45 of the points that you're predicting coming on offense?
Yes. Yeah. If I thought that they were going to get a defensive score, I'd be up near you. Even with the coming out early and struggling and things like that. I don't often predict special teams or defensive touchdowns. Sometimes I do. But, yeah, I if they win 45-7 and they don't get and not all those points are on offense, I'm going to be a little bit concerned about this offense right now. But, yeah, they're all on offense for me.
Right on. It didn't feed into my prediction either. I was just curious. I mean, Notre Dame has scored on special teams 3 times this season. Scored touchdowns on special teams 3 times this season, but they have yet to score one on defense. I think that trend is going to change. Quickly.
It's at some point in time, right? Like you think it will. I honestly think it'll happen more in a bigger game. You know, that's why I'm thinking Navy Pitt is potentially when that we could see that happen, Trev. And senior days have tended to have lately some defensive action going, defensive and special teams action going on. Should have had a special teams touchdown on senior day last year. Officiating crew screwed that over, but I think they had like 2 against Georgia Tech, and Freeman's year as the D coordinator, right? When they won 55-0 at home over Georgia Tech. But yeah, and again, Trev, I think this is a game that's 17-20 at halftime, 21 at halftime, something like that. And then the offense really catches fire in the third quarter and just puts this thing away. Like, I think it's, if I'm correct on the offense sputtering early, it's like maybe it's 21-0 at halftime, 17-0 at halftime, and then they match whatever points they have in the first quarter in the first half in the third quarter, and just really come out and just put this game away. But like I said, I hope that the offense comes out and plays like it did against Arkansas and Purdue, because if they play like they did against Arkansas and Purdue, they will set a season high in points. I have no doubt about that. They're that talented, and this is just a team that's not that great on defense.
Well, let's talk some game records, Bryan, and I have a couple on offense and on defense. We'll start on the offensive side. You and I are 2 offensive guys, and the first one that I have is C.J. Carr. He's a player that I think Notre Dame really has to start getting going down the stretch in these final 5 games, and this is the perfect opponent to get him ready for it. You're on the road. It's a 3:30 kickoff. You just got done playing a game which was your most inconsistent of the year. I mean, I think you had what was your passing stat? What was the passing stat that you told me of, like, how many passes C.J. Carr completed to receivers against the USC? I know the number wasn't that high, like in terms of yardage or. Yeah,
I'll pull it up here in the film breakdown section. So just give me a second. I got that right here. So 2 receivers. CJ threw. He had 9 completions to receivers, 6 to running backs, 1 to tight ends.
Okay.
It's usually a much wider gap than that. It's usually, receivers are double digits. Running backs and tight ends usually don't come close. So, like, for example, against NC State, the receivers had 12 receptions in that game. I think Boise State, they were in double digits as well. You had 12 against Boise, only 3 completions to anyone else other than the receiver. So, yeah, it was much, much closer than we've seen. The only time they've had fewer passes to receivers was Purdue, and that's because CJ only threw 12 passes. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of different deal, yeah.
I do think that this is going to be a game, though, where we're going to see C.J. Carr spread the ball around quite a bit on offense. So, similar to what we saw against A&M and Purdue and Arkansas, where he's hitting, 6, 7, 8 different receivers. Because the last few games he's hit, 4 different receivers, 5 different receivers. And so I think he spreads the ball around quite a bit. I expect Denbrock to get CJ Carr in a rhythm pretty early. But again, a lot of my reasoning for putting CJ Carr as a game wrecker is for what it means beyond this game, not just what it means for Boston College. So, Brian, he's my first game wrecker on offense.
He's mine too, for the reasons you talk about. I think they're going to need him to kind of be that guy. If CJ Carr comes out in the first quarter, in the first half, and is playing well, then the prediction that I have will look more like the halftime score than it will the final game score.
Yep.
If CJ, and that's what happened against Arkansas. I mean, he just came out and was throwing dimes early in the game, and there just wasn't a lot they could do. This offense is incredibly difficult to defend if the O-line and CJ Carr are playing well. Like, honestly, I don't know that you can defend it. He's my number one. My number two, Trev, is I don't disagree that the ball is going to get spread around, but I just have a feeling that Malachi Fields is going to come out of this one on fire and ready to go. I just think that, he kind of got shut down the last couple games, and I think BC is still going to do things to try to stop him. I just have faith that the Notre Dame coaching staff is going to find some ways to get Malachi the football, that CJ is going to want to try to get him the football, and he's going to have a big game. And so talking about my game wreckers, easily could go with Jordan Faison here. I could see Jordan having a big game. I could see Eli Raridan having a big game, backs out of the backfield. I think, I'll talk about them in a second, but I just think this is a Malachi Fields game. Just the way that BC is going to want to get a second. I just think Tim Lewis is a smart guy. I just don't see him sitting back there in cover 2 against this team and just letting them just the run game rip them up. I don't see that. I think he's going to try to play more single high to get an extra safety in the box, because they've got very good run defending safeties. That's the thing of why it frustrates me when I watch them play as much too high as they do. I was like, dude, your safeties are dudes in the run game. Get them down there. But I think Malachi is going to be a force. Here's a crazy stat for you, Trevor. We're talking about the matchup of this game. And I was looking at this when I was doing my run game breakdown. I wrote this on the front page of the message board. But Boston College ranks 101st against the run in yards per game, 105th in yards allowed per attempt. But this season, they've only played 2 FBS offenses. So that's 7 teams. Only 2 have ranked higher than 100th in rushing offense. The best rushing offense they played this year was UConn, who's 60th. Ironically, that's the best run defensive performance they had. The next highest rushing offense they play is Louisville, who after rushing for 317 yards against Boston College, jumped up to 79th in rushing. They gave up 226 yards to Clemson, who ranks 113th in rushing. They gave up 213 yards to Stanford, who ranks 131st in rushing. I have to think that after what they watched against USC, that Tim Lewis is going to commit a lot of resources into the box, and that's going to open up some big-time opportunities for Malachi Fields in this game.
Malachi Fields is my second one as well. I get that completely. I know, man. I know. We're matching today, bro. We got the same game wreckers. I'm going to legally change my name, but no, in all seriousness, I do think, yeah, sounds good.
We'll adopt you.
Yeah, sounds good. I've already done it once. Let's just keep the train rolling. We'll do it. I'll find the papers. But no, man, I do think, especially given the recent news with Jaden Greathouse being out once again this game, we mentioned over the bye week that Malachi Fields' effectiveness within the offense has gone down since Jaden Greathouse has been absent from the offense, just because you only have to guard really one possession threat on the field, especially with Jaden Greathouse out. So now I think Mike Denbrock is going to have to get creative with the ways that he's going to get Malachi Fields the football. But you and I see it the same way. I don't see Tim Lewis just allowing JD and Jeremiah Love to run rampant on their defense. If he allows them to do that, I think that's a systemic failure. But here's another fun stat for you. If Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price were their own football team, they would rank 34th in the country in rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, because they would also actually. I looked at this the other day, Trev. Hold on a second. That's a crazy stat. Let me see here. I just thought I saw this the other day. Give me a second. When I was doing the run game breakdown. Yeah, if they would rank, what did you say they would in rushing touchdowns?
34th, because just Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have 17 combined rushing touchdowns so far this season.
They would also rank in the top 50 nationally in rushing yards per game.
Yeah.
They're at 181 rushing yards per game by themselves. Just the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have 7 more rushing touchdowns on the season in one less game than Texas does as a team.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
So that is nuts. And that doesn't include JD Price's 2 special teams touchdowns. You know, they're 4 combined receiving touchdowns. Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm with you. I don't see Tim Lewis allowing them to do what they are able to do so willingly. I guess I'll put it that way. My final game wrecker on offense is going with Sullivan Absher for the same reason I went with Joe Otting last week. It's his first collegiate start. Now, this can go one of 2 directions, and Notre Dame's offensive line has shown that to varying degrees they can just kind of reload along the offensive line and backfill, significant injuries in the trenches. But I need to see a level of dominance from Sullivan Absher in this game. He is 6'8", 327 pounds, going up against a very undersized defensive line from Boston College, one that you can push around. There's no question in my mind that he can come into this game and just do his job. But he's following up a performance from Billy Schroth with one good knee, who probably played his most dominant game of the season in their last outing against USC and was hurt. So Sullivan Absher is going to be my third game wrecker. Again, same conversation that I had with CJ Carr. It's not just for what it means against Boston College. It's moving forward because right now it's a TBD on when Billy Schroth can return, and you need whoever's stepping in at left guard to, 1, remain healthy, and 2, show a level of dominance in both phases. So Sullivan Absher is my third game wrecker, Brian.
My third is I'm going with the 2 backs. I think that this is another game where they're going to dominate. I'm curious to see how BC handles the Notre Dame run game from a schematic standpoint. Do they put extra resources? I still think they get theirs in the run game, but I also think this is a game where we're going to see them make a lot of plays in the pass game too. I just, when Notre Dame's playing an opponent that they think lacks perimeter speed, one thing that they do is they get the ball to the perimeter to the running backs quickly. And I think we're going to see that in this game as well. I mean, you saw Louisville and Pitt both do that, and Louisville just absolutely annihilated them with outside zones and some swing passes and things like that. I think the running backs are going to be dudes. I think that they're going to continue to go out. And I always want to just say Jeremiah Love, but it's impossible the way these 2 are playing to only say 1 for me.
I get it.
It's the duo. Yes, Jeremiah Love is 1 and Jadarian Price is 2, or however you want. I don't really care how you want to do that, but the fact is, as a duo, they're dynamic. And when you watch their interaction on the sideline, they look at this as a duo. And so I'm very much excited to see these guys go at it. It's like people say it's Batman and Robin. No, it's more like the Justice League. You know what I'm saying? Like Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's sort of how I see this one, as opposed to, Batman and Robin. It's Batman and Superman. So I'm excited to see what these guys are going to do against what I think is a tough group of BC players, but a group of BC players just lack the athleticism and speed to hang with these 2 guys.
Let's talk a little defense, Brian, and talk some game wreckers on the defensive side of the ball. My first one is Boubacar Traore. There's going to be a lot of times where he goes up against right tackle Kevin Klein, and I think Boubacar is a guy that has to have a day. For what it means for down the road, not just for Boston College, but he has been your most consistent pass rusher. And really, I think you can comfortably talk about any of the defensive ends that will be matching up in this game between Josh Burnham and Bryce Young and Junior Tuialamaka. But this is a game where we still have yet to see Boubacar really be that guy. I think he takes a big step towards his ceiling on Saturday as a pass rusher. So I have Traore as my first one.
Which is scary to think about that you say that, Trev, because he's on pace for double-digit sacks in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree with you. He hasn't had that, oh boy, that's the Boubacar we saw last year game. He's had flashes of it. He's my number 1 as well. 2 reasons why. 1, well, really 3 reasons why. 1, he's just been getting better and better and better each week. 2, I think their right tackle really struggles with athleticism, and he hasn't faced anybody like Boubacar this season, with all due respect to some of the DNs he's faced. And 3, it's a going home game for Boubacar. I mean, he's from this area. So's Gerby Lambert, which is why I thought about putting Gerby on my game records as well, because I'm like, Gerby's going home, and he's going to want to put on a show for the family, you know? And so I really thought about putting Gerby on there, and I could certainly see Gerby doing that. But I think that's another thing for Boubacar, is like, this kid's going home. He's going to have the peeps there, and family's going to be there, and high school teammates probably going to be there, and he's going to put on a bit of a show, in my opinion, for this game. But the matchup is also just really not good for Boston College favor. My number 2, Trevor, so I'm actually going to go with the same position, and I'm going with Bryce Young. I think that they both just really have big games. You could throw in Josh Burnham, you could throw in Jordan Patelho, you could throw in whoever you want at defensive end. But I really think we've seen Bryce ascending each week, and I keep getting questions. We didn't get one this week. You know, like, why hasn't Bryce Young really, had a good season? And I'm like, A, expectations are too high, but like, B, I know Bryce struggled in the first few games, but I think I think people just, when a guy gets off to a rough start, they just assume that that's kind of where he is until he has that like a monster game. I just want to remind people that Bryce Young is tied for second in total pressures on the season. He's 1 total pressure behind Boubacar, despite having 51 fewer pass rushing snaps than Boubacar. So he's been more disruptive on a per snap basis than Boubacar by quite a bit this season. So I just think we need to kind of remember that a little bit, and to when we think about how disruptive he's been. But I think this is the game where Bryce Young really has his coming out party for the 2025 season. So I have both ends on here, Trev.
Here's a little deep cut for you here, Brian. I think that this defensive line could have a performance like they did. Do you remember the 06 Stanford game when like Victor Abiamiri had 3 sacks, Trevor Laws had a sack, they ended with like 5 team sacks? I could see it being something like that. But I really could, with the talent on Notre Dame's defensive line matched up with Boston College struggling offensive line. I could see it being something like that. I really could. I love the Bryce Young pick. My second game record.
Game like that against Stanford in 2018 as well, when Jerry Tillery went off. The whole D line was just eating that night. Yeah,
I could see it being something like that. I really could. But my second and my third are both in the secondary. My second one, though, is Dallas Golden. Devontae Smith is still questionable. He's a questionable player that I understand. He got back to health and then re-injured the calf. Look, man, calf strains can quickly turn into torn Achilles, and I totally understand playing it safe with him. But Dallas Golden has started to come around. I thought he played relatively well against USC. I really do, and I think Dallas Golden is. We talked about, first couple reps, first couple games in the season, like the light bulb started to flicker, and then USC, it's starting to come on a little bit, still just a little bit dim. You're waiting for him to fully kind of get his feet under him. I think that could be this type of game, and I think it could come against Lewis Bond.
What's funny is I thought Dallas, the light went on after he got beat twice in the first half against NC State.
I do too.
I thought he was really good in the second half of that game, and then that carried into the USC game. I agree with you. I like that.
After that double move that he gave up against NC State, I think the light bulb finally came on. He's like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." Because it's one of those plays that you can talk about in a film room and you can like explain on the practice field, but until it happens on a Saturday, it's a little bit different. And since then, I think he's been a different player. He's going to be challenged this week going up against Lewis Bond, by far the team's leader in receptions and go-to targets. I think Dallas Golden is going to have a good game this week. Might come away with the second interception of the season. So I have Dallas Golden as my second game record. Brian, who's your third?
I'm in the secondary as well. I think Adon Schuler's just really been playing lights out. I was torn between Adon and Tay Johnson. I was torn between the two of them, but with how much BC likes to throw the short to intermediate game, and I think they're going to try to run the football in an attempt to extend the game. Try to get the tight end involved. I just think this is a game where there's going to be a lot going into Adon Schuler's zone. And I think Adon's going to have some big moments in this game. You could have gone with Tay. The way you smiled, I kind of feel like maybe that's your 3. is Tay. I was back and forth. I just think the way that BC's offense will attack Notre Dame is going to give Don a lot more opportunities to make plays on the ball. And I think he's going to have a big one. But if your number 3 is Tay, just know that I was back and forth between the two of them.
My number 3 is Tay Johnson. I wrote about him earlier this week. I think that he's going to have some interesting matchups with Jeremiah Franklin. He is Boston College's second go-to target in that offense. And I'm never going to predict it. I just have a gut feeling, like I said, that Notre Dame's defense has yet to come away with a touchdown this year. And Tay Johnson has already found the end zone on special teams, recovering that block punt against Texas A&M. I just have a gut feeling that he's itching to get another one. And he's been close. He's been jumping some routes. And I think this is going to be a game, especially if we think the D-line is going to perform the way that, they're capable of playing. He's going to have some opportunities to, return a batted pass, or there's going to be one that's floated across the middle that he could make a play on. So Tay Johnson is my third game wrecker for a lot of the reasons that you said about Don Schuler.
It's going to be interesting, Trev, because I do think there's going to be some opportunities for DBs to make some big plays in this game. I do. And I'm curious to see which one or which ones step up and have those moments. It's going to be a very, very fascinating part of it. So, yeah.
I think so too, man. I think so too. Should be fun. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk some ball, man. We have been, but we're talking big picture college football coming up here. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Bill Bender and Bill Troche went live earlier today. They talked the first playoff bracket coming out. They also talked about some playoff implications going on this weekend. Also got a super chat from our guy, Jacob Sweat. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate you. Just officially joined the IB boards last week as Thankful and Grateful JS. Wanted to thank you guys for all the content and welcoming me into the family. Welcome to the boards, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's why y'all need to jump on board, Jacob. We appreciate you very much, man. But I'm telling you guys, if you make that leap, you're going to love it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You really are. Really are. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we're talking Notre Dame rooting guide. We came up with this idea. We talked about, hey, look, with the position that Notre Dame is in this season, we get a lot of questions on the message boards, in live shows, across mailbag questions, super chats around, hey, should we root for this team or this team this weekend? What does Notre Dame need to happen on a week-to-week basis? Because right now they are on the outside looking in of the playoffs. So I think that is going to start to change here over the next couple of weeks. But in order for some of those things to happen, there are some specific games where we kind of have to root for some outcomes, scoreboard watching, if you will. So what we've done the last couple of weeks, we started last week, right?
Yeah, we wanted to wait till after the BC game. We wanted to let's let them get out of the BC game or USC game. Let's see them win that game, earn that first really, really good win. Then we'll start looking at the playoffs. And so that's why we waited till last week to do that. Trevor and I have been wanting to do that since like week 4. But we're like, let's wait till they win a few games and it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. That is definitely for sure. But look, this is a huge weekend, and there are tons of games. Like we talked about earlier, there's 8 on our outline in just this section, but there's a lot more games that are going to impact Notre Dame's playoff outcome. So we're going to look at this from a Notre Dame's opponent's perspective. And all 8 games that we're going to be talking about are teams that Notre Dame has played or are gearing up to play this weekend, Brian. And there's a lot of things that are going to be going on this weekend in college football. Some chaos, some teams need to handle business. It's going to be definitely going to be fun to watch, man.
It is, and it's there's a lot of different aspects to the game watch this week. Some of it is related to improving Notre Dame's resume with a win that they already have looks better now. Others are you're trying to hope that people improve the resumes of teams that Notre Dame's going to play. And then there's a couple games this week where a Notre Dame opponent has a chance to knock off a team ranked ahead of Notre Dame, or at least. A team that might be in contention with Notre Dame. And then there's also some games, Trev, that are national games. I have one of them listed in the Notre Dame opponent section. I keep forgetting that Notre Dame didn't play Louisville this year, so I'm moving that down on the list. Make that note, Trev, the Louisville Virginia Tech game. I'm not sure why I have that one under Notre Dame opponents, but it's a very interesting game. It's a very interesting game, Trev, to look at this, and same thing with the Virginia Cal game, and say, there's just so many games that impact what Notre Dame is gonna be ranked on Tuesday. Surprising number of games that are going to be there, and so we're going to do that. There will be some games that we're going to kind of double up on. We're going to talk about them here, but then also preview them in the next game or in the next segment when we do the national games. But it's going to be more focused on it from a Notre Dame standpoint. So, point being is when you're watching games this weekend, here's who you should be rooting for to win and why. I would encourage people not to lose their minds if all of them don't go how you want. I saw that a little bit last week. You don't need all of them to go your way, or even most of them. You just need a couple of them to kind of go your way, especially the national thing. So, people kind of freaking out when not every game went their way last week. And I'm like, guys, relax. We're going to do this every week. It's not this week. Everything has to happen perfectly or Notre Dame is out. It's not how it is, but I'm ready to jump in, Trev. And some of this stuff, I'm curious to hear you guys in the chat, what you think about some of these games, because I think some of my takes, there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with me, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation. So let's get to it, Trev.
Well, let's do it. I'm interested to hear some of these takes now too. I'm ready, baby. So let's talk about this first game, 12 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Number 10, Miami Hurricanes on the road for the first time this season, leaving the state of Florida, playing the SMU Mustangs in Texas. Now, Brian, outlook on this game. How are we feeling about this? Miami is the number 10 team in the country, only 2 spots above Notre Dame right now.
Yeah, so this is one right off the bat that I think people are going to disagree with me on. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, look, you need Miami to win. You need Miami to, to go out there and be better than Notre Dame for 2 reasons. One is, you don't want the final at-large to come down to Notre Dame and Miami, because Miami has they have the head-to-head, and that's going to get them in. And I'm not someone who necessarily agrees with that, and I'll explain that. So this is a game that's going to help Notre Dame no matter what, because either A, Miami does win and they keep staying high in the rankings and it gives Notre Dame a better loss, but I also think it actually helps Notre Dame if also in a different way if Miami loses to SMU. And I know that the immediate reaction, yeah, but they won the head-to-head. And look, head-to-head does matter. Head-to-head should matter. The committee has always said, but head-to-head is not the ultimate trump card where it's above everything else. And when I look at Miami and kind of what they have left on the schedule, it's not a given that they're going to win out. And do you want them to be 10-2 with the last game loss to Pitt? Or do you want maybe a last game loss to Pitt to make them 9-3 and now they're behind Notre Dame for sure? But when I look at Miami's overall resume, Trev, if they have 2 losses, the Notre Dame game is obviously a big one, but that was a long time ago. The South Florida loss was a good one. How does that look? How does the Florida loss look right now? The Florida State win doesn't look great right now. The Stanford loss doesn't, Stanford win is whatever. What does a Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt win do for them? Kind of what it'll do for Notre Dame. It's kind of a wash. But then they're going to have 2 losses that are just bad losses. And that's the thing that's going to me, I could see a world in which Notre Dame is ranked ahead of Miami if they have the same record. My concern, however, is I don't know that Miami's capable of running the table. And I don't know that I necessarily want Miami to keep winning, get all the way up to 4, and then lose to Pitt in the final week of the regular season, and then fall, but still be right ahead of Notre Dame. And then, or they win out, and then they're 11-1, and then they lose the ACC title game, and now a second, or third ACC team gets in, something like that. So either, like somebody just said, win out or lose out for Miami, and that's kind of where I'm at. But I just don't have a ton of faith that Miami can win out. The sooner they lose that second game, the more likely it is that they're going to lose a third game. But at the end of the day, don't see that happening. I think I'm not impressed with SMU this year. They struggled to move the ball on Wake last week. what are they going to do to Miami? But so this one to me is a win-win either way. What do I think you want to root for? I don't know. It depends on which thing you think is more likely. If you think Miami is capable of winning out the rest of the way, then root for Miami. I think that helps Notre Dame. If you think Miami's a flawed team that might lose another game, then you should want them to lose this game to make sure that it helps. It helps sort of solidify the fact that they're going to fall below Notre Dame with another loss.
This game I'm relatively neutral in. This game that Miami plays against SMU is going to tell me what I need to root for the rest of the season for a lot of the reasons that you just explained. If Miami wins, I don't know if there's another team on their schedule that can. I mean, there are teams that can beat anybody if there's anything that we've seen this season in college football. I think if they lose this game, that puts Miami in a spot where they have now lost, 2 of their last 3 games. They lost to Louisville at home. They lose their first game out of state, and then they still have Virginia Tech on the road and then Pitt on the road. But if they lose this one, I think that they could pick up another loss, but I'm not banking on it. I don't see them losing to Syracuse. I think NC State, it's a little smoke and mirrors. They have talent, but their best win of the season came in week 2, and since then it's been you beat Wake Forest on the road, and then outside of that, their only other win has been against Campbell. Outside of their first 2 weeks of the season. So it's like, it's not bad, I guess. Pitt would have to be the last one. So this game for me is like, if Miami wins, I'm going to want them to continue to win out. If they lose, then it's like what you guys said is, pick a direction and hope that they lose at least one more to drop behind Notre Dame. I agree with that completely. But like you said, it's a win-win. I'm relative.
Between NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, I can see them losing one. Especially those 2 road games against Tech and Pitt, because they're going to be cold, very cold. And Miami hasn't typically done well in those situations.
Second game that we're talking about here, Brian, the Navy midshipmen, who are still unranked, unfortunately, which I could see changing depending on the outcome of this game. 12 p.m. kickoff on ESPN2. Navy travels to play North Texas in a G5 battle. This should be another fun one.
I mean, this is a simple one. You want Navy to win this game. This Navy last week in the AP poll was the first team right outside the top 25. And I don't know where the committee's going to view them, but the committee gave love to Navy last year. The difference is this Navy team hasn't been as impressive as last year's Navy team and like blowing teams out. But this is their chance to kind of prove themselves. Navy is not getting talked a lot about as being the potential G5 representative. But if you look at it, with Memphis beating South Florida last week, Navy has North Texas, South Florida, and Memphis all left on their schedule. And so the odds of them kind of getting that G5 bid are not great, because I have a hard time seeing them win all 3 of those games. But I think it gives them at least a puncher's chance. But you want this matchup next weekend when Navy comes to Notre Dame to matter more. And if Navy can beat North Texas, who is a 7-1 team and has looked good this season, then that just gives them it's really their first high-profile win of the season from a G5 standpoint. It's their first, in my opinion, really good win this season. Unfortunately for Navy, some of the teams they've played so far haven't been as good as maybe we had hoped that they would be. This season, Air Force hasn't been that good, and a lot of the other teams weren't expected to be good this season. Temple's been one of their better wins so far, and Temple's 5-3. So they need this kind of win over on the road against a really good North Texas team who blew out Washington State, blew out UTSA, blew out Charlotte last week. Their only loss so far this season was to USF, who's a real good football team. So we're going to see if Navy can get it done, but if they do, it sets up a potential top 25 matchup, because I can see the committee putting, I believe I think Navy, I could be wrong on this, but isn't Navy the last undefeated G5 team left? So Navy 7-0, and there's no undefeated teams at Conference USA, none in the MAC, none in the Mountain West, none in the Pac-2, and none in the Sun Belt. So yeah, Navy's the last undefeated G5. If they beat a 7-1 North Texas team on the road, I could see Navy being ranked in the first playoff committee rankings, because they're going to have to position Navy in a spot to be ranked higher when that first ranking comes out. Navy hasn't done anything yet to warrant a top 25 ranking. This could be their first shot to do that. Or this is their first shot to do that. So you need Navy to win.
That was what I was going to ask. So need Navy to win and handle business against North Texas this weekend. We are on the same page. Next game that we're talking about, we're taking a trip over to the ACC. Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. Talking about the Pittsburgh Panthers on the road against the Stanford Cardinal. Right now, FanDuel has them favored, the Pittsburgh Panthers favored by 14.5 points. And this is actually more of an interesting game than what some people might think that it is, Brian. I mean, for as much of a running joke as what Stanford is, they've yet to lose at home yet this year. Yet to lose at home. And that makes this matchup a little bit more interesting outside of just looking at the talent on Pitt versus the talent on Stanford, the X's and O's, and the overall record. How do you see this one playing out, Brian, and what should Notre Dame fans be rooting for here?
You want a Pitt win. I mean, look, there's no win that's going to make the Stanford win at the end of the year look good. Yeah. They're just not a good team. And so, Pitt's rolling right now. And, this game would improve Pitt to 7-2, I believe, right? Isn't Pitt 6-2 right now? Yes. It would improve them to 7-2. Then they have a bye next weekend before they play Notre Dame. So, again, you want to be able to have for Notre Dame to have some wins against ranked opponents. And here's how the committee is going to look at Pitt. They're going to see a team that's 7-2. They're going to look at their resume and say, they don't have like a lot of great wins on their resume. Like there's no like big top 25 wins on their resume. But here's what they're going to do. They're going to say, okay, Pitt started 2-2. They have a home loss to a ranked Louisville team, at least ranked as of now. They have a really bad road loss at West Virginia. So why did they deserve to be in the top 25? Well, after losing to Louisville, they made a quarterback change. And they put Mason Houshell in at quarterback. And since that game, Pitt has been outstanding. They're 4-0. They went on the road and beat Florida State. They went on the road and beat Syracuse convincingly. They beat Boston College 48-7. And in their most recent game, they beat NC State 53-34. Then they go out and give Stanford their first home loss of the season. Now, all of a sudden, there's at least a chance between this game and then the bye week next week when more teams lose that Pitt has a shot to be ranked in the top 25 when Notre Dame plays them. You beat a top 25 team in the middle of November, even if that team falls out, that's going to be viewed as a good win. And so I think Pitt beating Stanford and beating Stanford convincingly is important for Notre Dame in that it'll position Pitt potentially as a top 25 team, because if they win this game, then there's no shot they lose between the now and when they play Notre Dame because they have a bye week next week.
I'm looking up some numbers right now and just how Pitt has done on the road so far this season, and they are 2-1. This is their fourth road game of the year. They lost in their first road game of the year on the road against West Virginia in that overtime lot. That was just such a weird game, Brian. We talked about that earlier this week. Real weird game. Won that Pitt, I'm sure, once back. And then they beat Florida State on the road 34-31, and then they beat Syracuse 30-13 in back-to-back road games in the middle of October. So this will be an interesting challenge, but I'm with you.
No, they're 2-0 on the road since Mason Houshell was put in at quarterback.
Yep, they are. And like you said, offense looks completely different. I'm with you there. Mm-hmm. Next game, Brian, another 3:30 p.m. kickoff on FS1. Fresno State is going and playing Boise State on the road on the blue field. This one should be interesting. Yep. I'm fair to assume we're rooting for a Boise State win here.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, Trev. With this one, you just want Boise to keep winning. Boise's 7-2 right, or 6-2 right now. This game would put them at 7-2. Fresno State's a team with a winning record. Fresno's 5-3 right now. They lost to San Diego State last week. They also lost to Kansas to start the season. You look at the remainder of their schedule. They got Wyoming, Utah State, San Jose State. There's a good chance that that Fresno could finish 8-4, and it's going to be viewed as a quality win. But over the next couple weeks, Boise State's got an opportunity to make some noise. And this week, well, hopefully San Diego State can go out to Hawaii and handle business this weekend. But next week, so Boise has Fresno this week. And that if they win that game, it puts them at 7-2. Then they're off the next week. So again, potential for some chaos to happen. And then they have to go out to San Diego State on the 15th. If San Diego State beats Hawaii, And I believe that San Diego State's game against Hawaii, I think that's next weekend, or is it this weekend? Let me go look at their schedule real quick. Okay, it's Wyoming this weekend, then Hawaii next weekend. There's a chance San Diego State's 8-1, and they could potentially be ranked in the top 25 when that game gets played. Nobody's talking about the Mountain West. It's all focuses on Memphis and South Florida and Navy. Nobody's talking about the fact that San Diego State is 6-1 right now and has a blowout win over a Power 5 team with a winning record in Cal. So you've got a chance these next couple weeks of Boise to earn some big wins. And even if they don't finish in the top 25, it's still going to look back and say that's a quality win. But if Boise can win their next two games over Fresno and San Diego State, there's a chance that they jump into the back of the top 25. And that would give, obviously, another resume building win. And here's the other thing. One thing we've seen, somebody in the chat was referring to the committee's been inconsistent. And my response is, I don't think they've been inconsistent. I don't like what the committee does a lot of the time, but they're consistent with their things I don't like. They're consistently overrate Big Ten teams. They consistently overrate SEC teams. They consistently are very positive towards Notre Dame in their rankings. But one thing that they also consistently do, the bottom half of the top 25, really the bottom 10 of the top 25, a lot of times are used to put teams that they want to position to jump into the top 12, or the bottom kind of third of it, they tend to use as resume builders for the teams they want to push in the top half, right? We see that all the time. And if you're Notre Dame, there's three teams that have a shot to kind of be that for them. Boise, Navy, and Pitt. And so the more Boise wins, the better chance they jump into the top 25 by season's end. So we want the Broncos to keep winning. And this win over Fresno would be a quality Power 5, a quality G5 win. Not a great one. That could be San Diego State in a couple weeks, but a quality one.
Second to last game that we're talking about here, Brian, it's on ESPN2. We're getting into the night slot, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Number 8, Georgia Tech on the road against the NC State Wolfpack. NC State, one of Notre Dame's last opponents, played them the week before USC. So how do you see this one playing out? What are we rooting for in this one?
I mean, this is a huge one, Trevor. I mean, this is a really big one because it serves two purposes. Number one, you're going to see Notre Dame jump ahead of Georgia Tech if Georgia Tech loses to NC State on the road. And like one thing that bothers me when I watch people do their rankings, and here's my playoff projections, they just look at record. I think it was my dad told me Greg McElroy had Louisville ahead of Notre Dame in his ranking, and it's just in his playoff prediction. It's just because of the record. That's not what the committee does. That's not a proper ranking. You don't just put all the undefeated teams at the top, then all the one-loss teams next. That's not how it works. Right now, Georgia Tech, who is undefeated, deserves to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame because they don't have any great wins, but they haven't lost to anybody. They keep winning, and you deserve credit for that. But the minute you catch a loss, your overall resume now takes a bit of a hit, in my opinion, right? They've got a 7-point win over Colorado, a 3-point win over Clemson, a win over Temple, a 1-point road win at Wake Forest. You won at home against Virginia Tech. You went on the road and beat a Duke team that's okay, 4-3 right now. And then you have a home win over Syracuse, a convincing home win over Syracuse. You're doing your job. All you can do is control what you can control. You can't control what's on your schedule. You go out and win every game. You deserve to be ranked high. You deserve to have a home playoff bye. The minute you lose to a team that's not very good, you're going to drop because your resume is not that great. And then if you lose to a team that Notre Dame stomped, there's a much better chance that Notre Dame jumps ahead of Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech could potentially leap back in front of them if they run the table and beat Georgia at the end of the year, and then maybe win the ACC title. But this will drop them below Notre Dame, in my opinion, in the first playoff poll. And then the double positive for that is it gives a Notre Dame opponent that they beat by 29 a big win. And the third positive is now all of a sudden the committee may look at Pitt a little bit differently when they look and see what Pitt did to NC State last week as well, which could jump Pitt back, could help boost Pitt's resume. So there's 3 big positives that come from NC State winning this football game. This is not a game to ignore. I'm not saying they're going to do it. We're not making predictions in this show necessarily, but I do think NC State's capable of it. It just depends on what version of NC State shows up. That looked like a defeated team a little bit against Pitt. And I'm a little concerned about that. So my hope is that going home helps NC State kind of refocus and kind of get their heads on straight. They had back-to-back really tough road games, and they've lost 4 out of 5. It's typical Dave Dorn. If he wants to salvage his tenure, or if some of the rumblings are true that he may be stepping down at the end of the year, it'd be nice for him to go out with some big wins, and this one would be good for him, but also be huge for Notre Dame.
Yeah, the biggest thing working in their favor is that they get Georgia Tech at home. It's been the most competitive NC State. They're just not a good team on the road. Lost by double digits on the road to Duke. They lost by double digits on the road to Notre Dame, double digits on the road to Pitt. But then you look at what they've done at home. Obviously, they beat East Carolina at home. They beat Virginia at home. Their only win on the road was against Wake Forest by 10. And then obviously they beat Campbell at home. So I'm with you. Depends on what version of NC State that we're going to see on Saturday. I'm definitely not banking on it. I don't think that they win this game. I know we're not giving predictions, but
right. If I was predicting this game, I'd predict Georgia Tech to win. I just think that Georgia Tech hasn't been as good as people think, and NC State's still a dangerous football team with that offense. I wouldn't be shocked if they win. I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Last game, Brian, in this slot that we're talking about, night game on NBC, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Number 23 USC on the road against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Big one for Notre Dame's resume as well.
I mean, look, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're not going to be happy with me saying this. You're going to actually probably pretty pissed at me right now. But honestly, for the next 5 weeks, every week, fight on. I mean, you need USC to keep winning out because they're going to do 2 things. Number 1 is it's going to boost your own resume. And also number 2, if USC wins out, Oregon will drop below you because they've got Oregon coming up later in the year. But you need quality wins. At the end of the year, your resume cannot be built only by 2 good losses. You have to have some wins that you look at and say those are good wins. Now, you don't necessarily need a ranked team to do that. If there's a bunch of teams that are in contention, a bunch of top 40 wins, then sure, that helps as long as those wins are dominant. But the fact is the higher ranked USC can get, the better it is for Notre Dame. And it gives Notre Dame a really good win to build around. Right now, what's your best win this season? It's either Boise or USC. That's it. So you need one of them, if not both of them, to keep winning and climbing up in the rankings. Those are the 2 opponents that they've already beaten that have the best chance to finish ranked. And so you're going to need them to win. And I know some of you can say, P-Dub says, I just can't cheer for them. That's fine, but just understand by cheering against them, you're also cheering for something that's going to hurt Notre Dame's resume. Just want to make sure we understand that. So is your love for Notre Dame greater than your hate for USC? That's what you have to ask yourself. Now, I'm not saying you're out there like clapping, like, let's go Trojans, fight on, baby. Like, I'm not saying you need to do that, but you need to root for them to win this game. That's the way I look at it.
Unfortunately, that is the truth that we're in, and I'm with you. And look, at the end, I don't like USC. I don't. But Notre Dame already handled business against USC, so if them winning is just going to continue to make Notre Dame look better, I'm down. It's not like Notre Dame lost to USC in a close game, and that was their second loss. So we got to keep rooting for USC, a team that beat Notre Dame in what could have been their last rivalry game in the regular season. Notre Dame handled business against them, beat them by 10, and arguably should have beat them by significantly more than 10 points. I'm okay rooting for USC if it means that it's going to continue to bolster their resume. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Same.
I like this. I-51 K-turn. BD, I get it, but I don't have to like it. Totally fair. You don't have to like it. I'm not saying you're like USC becomes your second favorite team in college football, but you better absolutely be wanting them to win every single week the rest of the way. And since this is a rooting guide, you need to root for them to happen. The good news is I don't know many Notre fans that like Nebraska. So at least it's like, you get that fan base gets to catch an L. But it's good for Notre Dame if USC keeps winning. And Trev, your point is great. You already beat them, so they can't say anything to you.
Mm-hmm. It's like folding the laundry. Like, it has to happen, but you don't want to do it, but you feel better when it's done. It's kind of like that.
Well, and you have to do it once you get married. When I was not married, everything stayed in baskets until I needed it. But now my wife doesn't let me get away with that anymore. So yeah.
Oh man. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to preview some.
No, it's not. We have a lot of other games we need to quickly roll through, Trev, on the national side of the prediction show. Yeah, keep scrolling down. There's the Indy opponent section, and then there's the national section. That's below it. That we're going to be doing who cheering guide for Vandy, Texas, Louisville, Virginia Tech, all those games. I just sent you. So you have those
you just
there?
sent it?
No, well, I sent it earlier, but I just moved the Louisville and Virginia games down. So if you look in the group of games that I sent you earlier,
yep, I got
the rooting guide, there's the one that says Indy opponents, and there's one that says national. We're going to work through the national games next.
All righty. Well, those were Notre Dame's opponents. Now we're gearing up for the national.
I told you we had a lot of games to go over today.
You did. It wasn't on the My Notes thing, so I thought that it was
Yeah, we'll go a little bit more rapid fire on this one than we did the last one, but it is on the thing I sent you earlier. It's just under the Notre Dame opponents one, but this one's a little bit more rapid fire. We don't have to explain it as much because it's not about Notre Dame's resume and all this kind of stuff. So we'll be able to work through this one a little bit quicker than the one that we just got through. And we'll start noon, ABC, number 9 Vanderbilt at number 20 Texas. And Trev, this one's easy. You want Texas to win out or win this one. I'm not someone who believes that Texas jumps Notre Dame if they win out. I don't. But I do know this: if Texas beats Vandy, Notre Dame will be ranked ahead of Vandy, and that's good for Notre Dame. So this one's an easy one. Hook them. There we go.
Yeah. Had to get that out of my system. Yep. Sorry. Next game.
It's all good. I get it, dude. Like I totally get it. But that's what's so fascinating about this new playoff format, Trev, is because there's so many more games. You're like, but I hate that team. I know, but them winning helps Notre Dame. But I hate that team. Like, I get it, but it helps Notre Dame. I don't care. I hate that team. But that's what we kind of got to do nowadays. And it sucks too, because like Vandy's such a great story, and you want to root for Vandy. But I don't like Vandy more than I like Notre Dame. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want Texas to win because that's just one more spot up that the Irish move when Tuesday comes.
Agreed. Next game, 3 p.m. kickoff on the CW, number 16, Louisville at Virginia Tech here. Big Hokies fans, are we?
Yeah, I don't think Louisville is going to finish ahead of Notre Dame, but it's part that this and the Virginia game later are part of sort of that nightmare scenario where if everything goes wrong, it includes Georgia Tech winning out till they get to the ACC title game. Miami wins out, Virginia wins out, Louisville wins out because none of those teams play each other. And so that could be potentially a nightmare scenario. I still don't think Louisville and Virginia jump ahead of Notre Dame, but it's at least possible. And so I just think it's just getting L's for those teams as early as possible. Just then we don't have to worry about them anymore. And just check them off the list. So you're going to be wanting the Hokies to get this one done.
Yeah,
Hokies, who the scuttlebutt is that maybe James Franklin might be their next head coach. I just remember y'all heard us talking about that a couple weeks ago, that would be a great move for Virginia Tech. But the other thing too, Trev, to your point is Virginia Tech has looked like a little bit of a different football team since they fired their coach. They haven't been perfect since they fired their coach, but they've been a lot more competitive, and they're coming off a really good win this past weekend against Cal. So maybe that helps turn their season around a little bit, and they can finish strong. But, yeah, you want the Hokies to pull this one off.
This is the part of the season that's always interesting to watch Jeff Brom, too. It almost feels like in a lot of his seasons, like, all right, got the big win, the big upset, check that off the box, and now the rest of the season we'll just kind of see what happens. And that's what happened with him at Purdue. That's what happened with him in 23 and 24 at Louisville. So,
yes,
I guess we'll just find out.
I still can't get over that they beat Notre Dame. They didn't just beat Notre Dame. They whooped Notre Dame in 2023. And then the next week got dominated by a Pitt team that finished 3-9. Like, I just, that team also that year also lost to Kentucky. it just, that was just a weird.
I mean, even last week's game against Boston College, at one point it was 31-24. It was 2nd and 20. Boston College was a stop away from making that really interesting. We just got done talking about how Boston College might get boat raced here in about 48 hours. So, that's Louisville, man. That's going to be a really interesting one. I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. 3:30 p.m. on ABC, Brian. Rivalry game. Number 5, Georgia on the road. Not in the swamp, right? This is neutral site, isn't it?
This will be in Jacksonville. Yep.
Okay, right on.
Yep.
Played in Florida. Rivalry game. This is an interesting one. And I know that we're going to take a deep dive into this one here in about 15, but this is going to be an interesting game.
And what do they call this? The world's largest cocktail party, right? Outdoor cocktail party is what they call this one.
It's a fun rivalry.
I just think Florida beating Georgia helps Notre Dame. Florida's not going to get in. The more 2-loss teams in the SEC, the better. A, it potentially knocks teams below Notre Dame. B, it diminishes some of the win quality of some other teams around Notre Dame. So this isn't a huge one. This is at the bottom of my most impacted Notre Dame because I could see Georgia staying ahead of Notre Dame if they lose this game. But it does maybe help Notre Dame if Georgia loses another one. But, just so I kind of want the Gators to get this one done. And I think overall it helps Notre Dame's chances of moving up.
Some Big 12 action up next, Brian, on Fox. 3:30 p.m. kickoff. Number 13, Texas Tech on the road at Kansas State. Big Wildcats fans tomorrow.
Yes.
Or this weekend.
Well, it's funny. You and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, Trev. We said K-State's out of playoff contention. But the question now is, can they ruin the season for everybody else? Well, technically, K-State's not eliminated from the Big 12. They're now 4-4, I believe, but they only have 2 losses in their conference because they lost to Army, and then they had another loss to who else beat them out of conference? It was Army and Iowa State. No, that's in their conference. Who's their other conference? Arizona? No, so I thought ESPN said that they had. Did one of their conference losses?
I don't think Iowa State counted as a conference loss.
So it was kind of like the NC State Virginia game. Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, because it says on ESPN that they've only lost 2 games in conference, but I remember us talking about that. I think I remember you mentioning that when we were previewing that game in week 0. Yeah. Now that you say that, but K-State's they've been kind of wrecking it. They wrecked TCU a little bit a couple weeks ago. They just dominated Kansas last week. They've had 3. Yeah, we'll get into the breakdown of that, but I just think the danger here is 2 Big 12 teams are ahead of Notre Dame, and that's Texas Tech and BYU. I think that's unlikely, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And so I just because the danger is, so let's say next week Texas Tech wins this game, and then next week Texas Tech beats BYU. And then all of a sudden, Texas Tech leaps Notre Dame and BYU's right behind Notre Dame. But then let's say BYU beats Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game in a rematch. I don't know that they're going to drop Texas Tech below Notre Dame based on the precedent they set last year. Does that then leap BYU? Now there's 2 Big 12s. I don't think it knocks Notre Dame out of the playoff, but I think it hurts their chances to host. I think there's a chance that all Big 12 teams are below Notre Dame if there's the chaos we think it's going to happen. And K-State beating Texas Tech is the perfect example of that, because now there's only a chance for one Big 12 team to finish ranked ahead of Notre Dame. That's BYU. And then BYU's got to go play Texas Tech next week. So we mentioned the other day, you want K-State to win this one, and you want Texas Tech to win against BYU next week.
Next game at 3:45 p.m. on ESPN2, number 15, Virginia on the road against Cal. And assuming here we are Bears fans this weekend to kind of keep Virginia Tech from nipping on the heels of Notre Dame.
Yeah, the Virginia is a team that right now, Trev, I'd just be shocked if they're ranked ahead of Notre Dame. I think that they're a team that you look at their resume, it's not an impressive resume in a lot of different ways. No, yes, they're 6-1, and that's great. And right now, Tony Elliott's maybe at the top of my leaderboard for Coach of the Year. I mean, he's done a great job there, but they've beaten Coastal Carolina, William and Mary, Stanford, Florida State, Washington State, and North Carolina. However, their road win over Louisville looks better and better every time Louisville wins, which is another reason you want Virginia Tech to win this game. And so they're playing at Cal this week. Cal's an up-and-down football team, but Cal at home has usually been a pretty good team this year, with the exception of the game against Duke. You want Cal to win this game and completely knock UVA out of playoff contention, short of them winning the ACC, which they'd still have a chance to do even if they lose to Cal. But it gets them out of the conversation for ever being ahead of Notre Dame, which is what you want. So that's why I'm rooting for the old Golden Bears this weekend and Justin Wilcox, who's, by the way, doing a phenomenal job at Cal, by the way. He's a very underrated coach.
Agreed. Let's jump into the night slot, 7 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. South Carolina on the road against number 7 Ole Miss. Gamecocks are coming off of a game where they had an opportunity to upset Bama. If it weren't for that crazy, we tried to let Jeremy Bernard score on purpose play call, amongst other things. But now they get Ole Miss on the road. Should be another fun one.
Yeah, I think this is one where if Ole Miss loses this game and wins the rest of their games, they're probably still in the playoff. But there's a really good chance that Notre Dame jumps ahead of them if they lose at home to South Carolina. It's unlikely, but it's just a game to keep an eye on for Ole Miss, is catching that second L, dropping them behind Notre Dame. Because part of this is just Notre Dame getting as highly ranked as possible. This isn't a will Notre Dame make the playoff or not game, but it could impact Notre Dame's seeding. So you're going to want the Gamecocks to win this one.
What about number 18 Oklahoma on the road against number 14 Tennessee? 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Are we Sooners fans this weekend? How do you see this one?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am, because when I look at Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee can jump Notre Dame, but there's at least an outside chance at it. Tennessee right now is 6-2. They're ranked behind Notre Dame in the AP poll, but not by a ton. I'm very curious how the committee is going to view Tennessee. They've got the loss to Alabama. They've got two good losses at home to Alabama home to Georgia at Alabama. Their wins are over Syracuse, East Tennessee State, UAB, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Kentucky. They have way less impressive wins than Notre Dame does, and they have common opponents that you'll be able to evaluate them by. Notre Dame hasn't played one of those common opponents in Syracuse, but they have played Arkansas, and Tennessee beat them by 3, and Notre Dame beat them by 43. But if they beat Oklahoma, they beat Florida on the road, and then they beat Vanderbilt in the last game of the year at home, that could be enough to maybe have a 10-2 Tennessee jump ahead of Notre Dame. So you're going to want Tennessee to catch a third loss, whether it's this week to Oklahoma, in 3 weeks at Florida, or in the last game of the regular season at Vandy. You want them to catch one more loss to make sure that they don't jump ahead of Notre Dame. So, yeah, you're going to be rooting for the Sooners this weekend. I'm not predicting it. I think Oklahoma's in trouble right now. But if you're asking who you're rooting for, it's definitely the Sooners.
Last one, little kickoff after dark. 10:15 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Number 17 Cincinnati on the road against the number 24 Utah Utes. A little Big 12 action here, Brian.
Yeah, again, I think it's highly, highly unlikely that Cincinnati can jump Notre Dame. But getting road wins on the road against ranked teams can help them jump up quite a bit. So you just want it to be where all the Big 12 teams are behind Notre Dame. And then let them jockey for at-large bids at the bottom. It doesn't matter. Notre Dame's above them all, and they keep winning. So this is one where if Utah wins at home, now there's literally only 2 Big 12 teams that could be in contention of being ranked ahead of Notre Dame, and they play each other next week. So, yeah, you want the Utes to win this one. Again, highly unlikely that Cincinnati could pass Notre Dame, but you just never know, Trev. I mean, their only loss is a neutral site game to Nebraska right now. They've beaten Bowling Green, Northwestern State, Kansas, a solid Iowa State team, UCF, Oklahoma State, Baylor. They don't have a lot of good wins on their resume, but if they go on the road and beat Utah, and then in 3 weeks after that beat BYU, and then a week after that beat TCU on the road, now it's what, an 11-1 in Cincinnati against an 11-1 BYU? You know what I mean? And now there's also 11-1 Texas Tech or something. I mean, 10. There's just all these different scenarios. So you want more chaos in the Big 12. Hasn't been enough chaos yet in the Big 12. This one would help with that a little bit. Now it's just Texas Tech and BYU are all that you're worried about.
I agree with you that it's unlikely, but we've seen a lot of unlikely things happen so far this football season. So it's time to start making more of those unlikely things happen.
Yeah, I mean,
of them happen.
There was a couple games that we talked about last week. Like, it's highly unlikely that this is going to happen, but I mean, that kind of happened a decent amount last week. What was the one game, Trev? There was one game in particular that I know we were talking about that was not in the highly unlikely that this team can beat that team, but hey, you at least you root for it to happen. And then, it was North Carolina, Virginia, I think is what it was. Like, it's unlikely that North Carolina is going to win this game. That game went to overtime. You know what I mean? So just further evidence that Virginia's just not that good, but that's what it comes down to. It's unlikely, and so that's why it's unlikely that Mississippi State beats Texas. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to. So this is another one of those games. It's unlikely, but you want it to happen.
Agreed. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's
By the way,
show.
we haven't forgotten Houston. The problem is Houston's resume is not going to be anywhere close to being good going because they just don't have enough of the good teams on their schedule. They have West Virginia, UCF, TCU, and Baylor. They don't play BYU. That's going to hurt them. They don't play Iowa State. They don't play Kansas State. They don't play Cincinnati. So Houston just won't have enough good wins to be ahead of Notre Dame. Houston could be in the playoff hunt, but they don't have enough good wins to be ahead of Notre Dame. That's why we're not talking about Houston. So we didn't forget about them. It's just right now, look at their resumes, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, BYU are the ones that have a chance to potentially jump ahead of Notre Dame.
Folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show, but don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to take a deep dive into the preview of some of the bigger games going on around college football this weekend. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Vince and I are going live at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight for this week's edition of the Spread Option, so you're not going to want to miss that either. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. And as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We are talking some big picture college football. We're going to take a deep dive into about 5 games and then highlight some other games that you guys should be keeping your eye on. And this is, like I said, it's worked its way up to be one of my favorite things that we do on a week-to-week basis. Just 2 guys being able to sit down and talk some football, man. And the first game that we're talking about, mentioned it in a previous segment, but now we're going to take a deep dive into previewing it, is the number 9 Vanderbilt Commodores on the road against the number 20 Texas Longhorns inside of Darrell K. Royal Stadium in Austin, Texas. Reminder, kickoff is at 12 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch that game on ABC. Right now on FanDuel, Texas is favored by 2.5 points. The over-under is 44.5, but really the way Vegas sees this, it's more of a pick'em game. Get that 3-point bump for being at home. So they see this one going either way, Brian.
So do I. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting game, Trevor, for both teams. Just a little bit of a backstory about this game. This will be the 14th matchup between the 4 teams, and here's the 2 teams. And here's the interesting thing about this, Trev, is that Vandy holds an 8-4-1 record over Texas in this matchup. They've won 8 of these games. Texas has only won 4. Vandy has won 1. Having said that, this is just the second matchup since 1928. So Vandy dominated back in the 1900s. And I think the first game was 1899. And Vandy won a bunch of those. They've only played twice since then. Texas won both of those meetings, including last year, 27-24, in a game that Texas controlled the game. Vandy made it closer at the end, so we'll see how this one goes. And then, of course, Texas could be without Arch Manning this weekend. He got hurt late against Mississippi State last weekend, got knocked out of that game with a concussion, so he's in concussion protocol, so he's listed as questionable. As of today, just saw the updated report. He's still listed as questionable for this game. Vandy obviously coming off of a big win over Missouri, a big ugly win over Missouri, but a big win is a big win. You know what I mean? And so this is going to be a chance for, both teams are still in the playoff hunt. Texas is on life support. They can't afford to lose another game. This is the kind of game that really boosts their resume and really hurts Vanderbilt's resume, Trev. So I don't want to say that this is a elimination game for both teams, because it's not. I think that Vanderbilt, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I think Vanderbilt, if they lose to Texas, still has a very good shot to get in, because they'd have 2 good losses, Texas and Alabama, they'd still have a win over Missouri, a win over LSU. They'd have a road win over South Carolina. They'd have a road win over Tennessee, and they'd beat a scrappy Auburn team. So I think that resume is good enough to get Vandy potentially in as a road team, but it makes their life a lot tougher, and now they have to beat Tennessee at Tennessee to get in. So it doesn't eliminate them, but it makes it real hard. Texas is done if they lose this game. So it's not quite an elimination game, but when we look at it and you preview it, this is just playoff contention. This is going to have playoff implications. And also, what kind of quality win do you have if you have a win over Vanderbilt? How good is your loss to Vanderbilt if they lose this game? Same thing with Texas. So there's a lot on at stake here from a playoff standpoint. For Texas, you're looking to save your season. For Vandy, this is your chance to make that just another giant statement win. They've won some big games at home, right? I mean, you had a statement win over LSU. You had a statement win over Missouri. You had a statement win last year over Alabama, who you beat at home. This is your first chance, Trev, to go have a big, giant SEC road win. I don't count South Carolina early in the year as a statement game. We weren't as high on South Carolina coming into the season as others. They haven't been very good. This is your chance to really go make a name for yourself as a program. Back-to-back years, you beat Texas and Alabama and LSU. Now Vandy's going to be considered legit, which not only helps them this year, but helps them big time on the recruiting trail as well. So that's what's at stake for these two programs.
Yeah, I'm with you. Big picture, this game means more for Vanderbilt this season and playoff implications. It's win or go home for Texas, which, I mean, I guess they're already at home, but you guys get the point. This one is going to be really interesting. When you look at this matchup in general, it is, I guess, perceived strength versus the perceived weakness versus the perceived weakness. I'm going to be very interested to watch the battle between Vanderbilt's ground attack versus Texas's rush defense versus what is Texas going to be able to do on offense versus Vanderbilt's defense, who I think is, on a relative scale, I think Vanderbilt's defense is better than Texas's offense. And you could make the argument that it's a wash depending on what happens, offensively for Vanderbilt. So this matchup is really, really interesting because it's what takes the day. I could see this being low scoring. I'm talking about this game later on tonight and the spread options. Some of the lines out for this game are really interesting. But yeah, Brian, I'm with you. This is an elimination game for Texas. And this could be the game if Vanderbilt loses, then they get put on life support. But right now, Vanderbilt's destiny is entirely in their hands. If you lose 100%. This game, it's out of your hands.
They're one of a small number of teams that control their own destiny. Texas has no control of their own destiny, meaning they could win out and still be left at home because of what's already transpired. Vandy wins out, and they're not only home, they're hosting. I mean, I think they would have earned that, in my opinion. So, yes, you're absolutely correct, Trev. And the interesting thing about this is, don't want to debate the Vandy offense versus Texas defense aspect of it. That's certainly debatable, in my opinion. But here's the part about Texas this year that's been good. Texas's rush defense this season has been pretty good. When Texas has struggled this season, it's been struggling to stop the throwing game. Florida threw all over them. Mississippi State threw all over them last week. Kentucky had success, get some yards on them. But one thing they have done this year is they've been pretty good stopping the run, with really the Florida game being the only exception. Florida went for 159. Florida only averaged 4.3 yards per carry. Not a single team that they've played outside of that has averaged more than 2.98 yards per carry. And only Kentucky, with 137 yards on 46 carries, has even topped 90 rushing yards against Texas. They held Ohio State to 77. Obviously, shut down San Jose State, UTEP, San Jose and Sam Houston State. They also held Oklahoma to 48 yards rushing. This past weekend held Mississippi State to 63 yards rushing. Having said that, none of those teams run the ball as well as Vanderbilt. So that's going to be the fascinating matchup, because all those outstanding performances that I just named, none of those teams are known as great rushing teams. And Vanderbilt comes to this game rushing for over 200 yards a game. And Diego Pavia and Cedric Alexander are a really nice 1-2 punch. And the young kid, no, I shouldn't even say the young kid. I think it's McKalen Young. He's not young. He's a junior, but his last name is Young. is another kid that's got over 300 yards rushing, and he's averaging 12 yards a carry. So this is a team that can run the football, and not just like last year they could run the ball on teams that weren't very good. They've run the ball on decent teams this year too. Ran all over LSU, ran all over Virginia Tech. Struggled to run the ball against Alabama from a yard standpoint simply because Alabama got so far ahead of them that they had to start throwing the football. They still averaged over 7 yards a carry against Alabama. They just couldn't run the ball a lot because they were behind in that game. So that's to narrow down the offense versus defense matchup, Trev, that you were mentioning. That's going to determine who's better, the Texas defense or the Vanderbilt offense. It's that run game breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
Texas looks good on paper. They haven't faced a run game like this yet. And that's what's going to make this really interesting. Really interesting.
Well, we giving score predictions for this game, Brian? For the
if
5?
You want, let's do it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
I love it. I have Vanderbilt winning this one, and I have them winning in a low-scoring affair. I have them winning 20-17. I think it'll be close. I think Vanderbilt picks up the signature win on the road. I just don't like Texas's offense, and that's what this comes down to ultimately. Like I said when we were previewing this game, I think in the battle between, let's just say for argument's sake, you call the Vanderbilt offense versus the Texas defense a wash. I like Vanderbilt's defense more than I like Texas's offense this year, especially when you add into the fact that Arch Manning could be questionable is questionable for this game and has a chance of not playing. Vanderbilt's defense is also really good at stopping the run this year, and that's something that Texas has not done a great job of. So, yeah, I like.
Is that what you said earlier, Trev? Did you say earlier that it was the Vandy defense better than Texas offense? Is what you said earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said the Vandy offense you liked better than the Texas defense. That's what my response was. Okay, yeah. On your point, 100% agree. Vandy's defense has absolutely been better this season than Texas's offense. No question. The thing that I would ask is I'd feel a little bit better about Texas's offense if I knew Arch was going to play, because I felt like they finally found something in the second half of that Mississippi State game last week.
Agreed.
Now, Mississippi State's defense isn't very good, but they just started to click. Like when they got behind, Arch just started letting it fly, but that's going to be the question. I still don't like Texas's offense. One good half against Mississippi State doesn't answer a lot of questions for me, Trevor. It doesn't. It really doesn't. I do actually, though, I do like Texas in this game because I don't think Vanderbilt's offense is very good either. I know that they've put up some numbers against some, LSU. That was great. LSU's not very good. They scored on Virginia Tech, poured a lot of points into the fourth quarter. I think what we saw against Alabama and Missouri is more indicative of who they are against better teams. And I do think this is a pretty good Texas defense. And I definitely think this has been a pretty stout Texas rush defense this season, even though, as I said earlier, they haven't faced anybody like Vanderbilt from a rushing standpoint. I like Texas at home. If Vandy was on the road, if it was at Vandy, I would like Vandy in this game. I just think Texas is a little bit of a desperate team. I think Texas is going to be forced to try to run the ball a little bit more this week. And it's going to come down to, was last week a wake-up call or not for Texas? I mean, that's really what it boils down to, Trev. Is it a wake-up call or not? And you got Steve Sarkisian whining about how hard it is to, build a culture when you have 30 new transfer players. I'm like, well, then stop freaking bringing in so many transfer players. It ain't that hard, but it's going to be really interesting to see how Texas responds to that. Does that the springboard for them, the way they came back and beat Mississippi State, or is that just a flash in the pan and they go back to looking like 2025 Texas in this game? Yeah. I have Texas winning 24-20.
You and I both see it.
Offense is not great. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I both see it relatively low scoring. I'm with you. I think the over-under for this game is somewhere around 44.5, just different outcomes of who's on either side. I like it, though, man. These are the interesting matchups. Whose weakness is not the weakest link in this game? Like Vanderbilt struggled to pass the ball. Texas has struggled to defend the pass. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting points in this game. This should be a fun one to watch. Next game, Brian, staying in the SEC, number 5 Georgia, who's 6-1 on the season, is playing Florida in a rivalry game, who's 3-4 unranked. It's at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. Kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. Right now, the Dogs are favored by 7.5. The over-under is set at 50.5 on FanDuel.
I just think this is a game that I always kind of look forward to, Trev. And I was correct. It's called the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's the rivalry game between Florida and Georgia. And Georgia obviously leads the all-time series. They have a 56-44-2 all-time record, which shows how long these two teams have been playing. They've been playing annually for a very long time. Gators have Georgia has won the last 4 and 7 of the last 8. The last time Georgia won this game was the COVID season of 2020, when you had that really good Florida team that played for the SEC title, beat Georgia 44-28. This is a really interesting matchup, Trev, because Georgia's been a very interesting team. And if we just look on paper, this is a game that should not be close. It should not be competitive. Florida has really struggled this season. They're not a great football team. There's some talent there, but they're very banged up. And, they're coming into this game. This will be the first game since they fired their head coach, after beating Mississippi State. Got smacked by Texas A&M, beat Texas, got smacked by Miami, got smacked by LSU, lost at home to USF. It's been a rough year for Florida so far. And Georgia's keeps winning. The thing about Georgia, though, is I don't think they win pretty. They haven't been like a real dominant team this year outside of winning, which is really important. But what I mean is they're not like the vintage Georgia team that just goes out there and smacks everybody. They beat Ole Miss by 8 last week in a game they had to come back and win. They had to come back from 10 down to beat Auburn. And honestly, if not for just a screw job going into the goal line at the end of the second quarter, they would have lost that game. They should have been down 17-0 going into halftime against Auburn. But instead, Auburn gets screwed out of a call. Georgia goes down and puts, gets a field goal. I think they got a field goal on that drive, and then ties it up in the second half, and then Auburn just tanks. So, and then, of course, you needed another big comeback to beat Tennessee. Now, kudos to Georgia for constantly coming back, but I just think part of it is because their defense has just not been very good this year. And their offense has been good at times, but it's also been pretty inconsistent at times. Whatever you want to say about the Florida team, their defense this year has been pretty solid. It's just their offense has been a hot mess. Billy Napier was the play caller for that offense. Does that change now? Do they look better offensively than they have in these games? And then the other part of it, Trevor, is you have to throw out. It's one of those games where in a lot of ways, it's that kind of rivalry where you've got to throw out the record. I would argue Florida has more talent this year than they did last year. Georgia doesn't have as much talent as they did last year. And this game was tied in the second half until DJ Lagway got knocked out of the game. So does your theory hold true? That's been pretty accurate so far this year, that once you fire a coach, it takes a lot of pressure off that team and they go out and play well. DJ Lagway's healthy. I'm really curious how this game is going to go. Look, there's nothing on the line for Florida, but for Georgia, this is the kind of game you can't stub your toe in, Trev, because when you look at the rest of what's left on their schedule, they still have to play at Mississippi State. They still have to play Texas. They still have to play Georgia Tech on a neutral field. There's some potential stumbling blocks left on their schedule. This is a chance for them to solidify their standing where they can still drop another game and they're a lock for the playoff. You lose this game, now you're in win or go home mode until you get to the SEC title game, if you're even able to be in that. So I think this is a big game for Georgia, and just an intriguing rivalry matchup, because this is when a team actually scares me more. When they're not good, they fired their coach, you don't take them as seriously. You're not as locked in as you would be if they were 6-2 and ranked 13th. So I'm very fascinated to see how this game is going to play out.
I am too. This is why I love college football. I just love the rivalry games. What is it? The greatest cocktail party on
the world's greatest outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, that's a heck of a name for a rivalry. I love that, man. I really do. The recipe for success, if you're Florida, is very, very simple. When you look at the series history, really going back to 2017, if your offense can get over 20 points, you are going to severely increase your chances of winning. And that might sound a little bit elementary, but I mean, from 2024 to 2021, they failed to get over 20 points. They lost all of those games. And then from 19 to 17, they didn't even score 20 points. They lost all 3 of those games. The one outlier is in 2020 when they did score over 20 points. And what happened, Brian? They won.
Convincing.
44-28.
That was that Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts team. Yep.
Yeah, it was. And so that's what this game comes down
those
to.
morons fired their head coach the next year, by the way. Just remind people of that. This is why Florida's where they are, because they fired their head coach who led them that season to a win over Georgia and the SEC title game. They fired him the next year. Just want to remind people of that.
Yeah, in a crazy move. But I don't want to oversimplify this because I don't want to make it seem like I'm taking away from how important that this game is for both of these teams, different reasons. And I am interested to see if my theory holds true of teams galvanizing after firing a head coach, because we've seen a pattern in that. But we can talk X's and O's for Georgia and how they're not as talented and as they have been in previous years, and what version of Gunnar Stockton are we going to see? And, is this going to, how's Kirby going to approach this game and all that? But if Florida's offense can get going, this will be a ball game. If they can't, I don't really care all that much about what Georgia's offense is going to look like. I think the Dogs win this game. Florida has to find answers on offense. Now, to your point, Billy Napier was in charge of calling the offense. Does that change? Well, potentially. But what's the series history has shown me that I don't think Billy Napier was their play caller in 2021. I don't think he was their play caller in 17, 18, or 19. And they still struggled to put points on the board on offense in those games. Seems a little bit high level, but Florida's offense holds the key to them being competitive in this one, because I do like Florida's defense.
Agree. I do think Florida has talent on offense. The problem is they're very young, and people asked a lot of young players to grow up in a hurry with poor leadership. Now the pressure's off of DJ Lagway. The pressure's off of Eugene Wilson. The pressure's off of all these young players. Can they just go out there and have some fun? Like, that's going to be the question. Hey, guys, we're 3-4. Our season's basically over. They fired our coach. Got nothing to lose, but you know what we can do? We can go out and ruin Georgia's season. That's what makes them dangerous. That's what I said. Honestly, here's what's funny, Trev. If Florida was ranked in the top 20, I'd predict a convincing, like a very dominant Georgia win. My prediction is a lot closer game because of the fact that Florida is unranked. And that's why I'm not predicting an upset, but I absolutely have Georgia on upset alert this weekend as far as a team that could see themselves get beat this game. As it stands, I have Georgia winning 34-24. And I have Georgia kind of pulling away late in this game. I think Florida keeps it competitive. I think it's going to be a little bit like last year. It's a competitive game. Fourth quarter goes to Florida. But I'm telling you right now, if the Florida offensive line can hold up in this game, I think Florida can score on Georgia, Trev. I do. And, I mean, look, even in some of their games where they didn't score a lot of points, this is what was so weird about them. Like, they only scored 23 points against Mississippi State. They had 452 yards of offense and 6.7 yards per play. Against Texas, they won 29-21. They had 457 yards, 7.0 yards per play. That's 2 of their last 3 games. So, I mean, they've shown the ability to move the ball in recent games. They just can't put it in the end zone, partly because they turned the ball over 6 times in their last 3 games, twice against Mississippi State and twice against Texas. That's the thing that kills them. So if they can protect the ball, they've got the talent to do damage to a Georgia defense that you and I said coming into the season, and it's been proven throughout the season. This is just a kind of an average Georgia defense. It is. And that's why a lot of teams have been able to move the ball on Georgia. They just haven't been able to, score enough points to win those games. I mean, Bama jumped on them 14-0. Ole Miss jumped on them. Tennessee jumped on them. If Florida's going to pull off the upset, they got to do the same thing. Got to jump on them. It's going to be the key. But I still have the Bulldogs. What's your prediction, Trev?
Yeah, I mean, turnovers are going to play a huge role in this. Florida can't take care of the football, and Georgia can't get takeaways. They rank 113th in the country in total turnovers gained. What takes the day there? I also have the Dogs winning this one. They are also on upset alert for a lot of the reasons that you just explained. But I think that Florida fails to eclipse the 20-point mark again. I have Georgia winning 24-17 in a game that is close. I just think it's going to be ugly. I think all signs are kind of pointing in that direction. Georgia has shown that they can win ugly. They play in a lot of ugly games. But then Florida's chance of winning this game, I think, is in an ugly affair. So I don't trust DJ Lagway to take care of the football. He has 9 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions on the season. I agree that you're asking a lot of young talent to do a lot with poor leadership. My question is has the damage already been done for this season?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big question mark for me with Florida. I have the Dogs winning this one in a close one, 24-17. So see how it goes down. Very interested. Third game, Brian. We got Texas Tech, Big 12 action. Number 13, Texas Tech, 7-1 on the season, on the road against Kansas State, who is 4-4. It's in Bill Snyder Family Stadium in Manhattan, Kansas. Kickoff at 3:30 p.m. on Fox. Right now, Texas Tech is favored by 7.5. The over-under is set at 52.5 on FanDuel. Talk to us about it, Brian. Little action in the Big 12 here.
Fascinating game for me. So K-State holds the all-time series lead 15-9. They've won 8 straight games. The last meeting was in 2023, a game that Kansas State won 38-21. This is a team, Trev, that I just cannot figure out, K-State. I mean, coming into the year, you and I both had very high expectations on them. I think we both had them playing for the Big 12 championship, correct? We just had them playing a different team. I had them playing TCU. You had them playing Arizona State, I believe. And season starts off absolute disaster. Lose in a neutral site game to Iowa State, in a game where they fumbled the ball inside their own 10 on a punt, turned it over 2 times later in the game, looking to punch in a score, just gave that game away to Iowa State. And then Rocco Beck made some great plays at the end of the game. And then, you get a win over North Dakota by 3. It was an ugly win. You're like, boy, this is, letdown game. Then a week later, you lose to an Army team who was coming off a loss to Tarleton State. Now, look, Tarleton State's a very good FCS team, but it's still an FCS team. They beat Army, and then Kansas State can't beat Army. They go on the road, lose to Arizona State or Arizona in a close game, drop to 1-3, and then get on track, get a good win over UCF, and then they blow a lead against Baylor. I'm pretty sure, Trev. I'm gonna have to look that up, but I believe. I mean, it's all these Big 12 games kind of bleed together, but I thought that K-State had a double-digit lead at one point in time in that game. Let me look that up real quick. So, yes, it was at one point in time going into the fourth quarter, it was K-State 31, Baylor 17. And then Baylor outscored them 18-3 in the fourth quarter to come back and win the game by a point. And then, so they're sitting there at 2-4. Seems over. They're getting ready to play a TCU team that's coming in pretty hot and offensively, and they beat them soundly 41-28 and had 2 defensive touchdowns. Then they go on the road and play Kansas last weekend, a big rivalry game. Kansas has coming off a beatdown at Texas Tech, 42-17, and K-State beats them in Lawrence by the same score that Texas Tech beat them by. So now we're sitting here with Kansas State at 4-4 again, and I don't have a clue what kind of team they are. But what I know is they're talented. That's what I know. And I know they're dangerous when they're playing well. And it looks like they're kind of like, well, we got nothing to play for, so let's just relax, go out and have fun. And they've won their last 2 games pretty convincingly. And in those last 2 games, they've scored 3 defensive touchdowns, which is kind of tapped down their yardage numbers. Like their yards don't look as impressive the last couple games because they've lost multiple possessions by defensive touchdowns or short fields by their defense. So their defense is playing better. Their offense is starting to figure some things out. And that makes them a dangerous team against a Texas Tech team who has had some major questions at quarterback this year because of injuries. You wonder where they're going to be this weekend. Will Hammond had replaced Baron Morton. And then now we just found out this week that Will Hammond, who went down with a season-ending injury last week, he's out. But they do expect Baron Morton to return for this game, last I read. So at least they'll get him back. Does that stabilize the Texas Tech offense, allow them to start cruising, or can K-State pull off another upset? This is a huge game with major Big 12 ramifications. This is the kind of game that if K-State wins, now you have to start talking about, can they win the Big 12? What are their odds of winning the Big 12? Because 2 of their 4 losses were considered non-conference games. So Texas Tech wins this game. Now you're back in control of the Big 12. You're now in a position where you win out, you control your own destiny because you play BYU next week. You win out, you clinch a spot to the Big 12 title game. So huge game really for Texas Tech, but a pretty big game for Kansas State as well if they're going to salvage their season.
I think the other really interesting facet to this game as well, Brian, and I don't know if enough people are talking about it, this could also be a trap game for Texas Tech. I mean, look, we just got done talking about how this Kansas State team is dominant or can look dominant at times, and they might have been able to turn things around. They've won 3 of their last 4. They lost on the road to Baylor, but they beat UCF, they beat TCU, and then they beat Kansas. Both of those Kansas and TCU games convincingly. They still beat UCF by 14. But does the Texas Tech football team look at it? I mean, yeah, they've won 3 out of the last 4. They're not good. They're 4-4. I mean, we're also talking about a football team that lost to Army, lost to Arizona, lost to Iowa State. It took them a game-winning field goal drive to beat North Dakota, not North Dakota State, North Dakota.
Right. Who's good, but the Sioux are not as good as North Dakota State is. That's absolutely true.
Could they be overlooking this, preparing to face a top 10 BYU team at home the next week, likely at night? What is that going to look like for this Texas Tech team? Baron Morton is expected to play. I doubt he's 100%. And so what is that going to look like for this Texas Tech offense? I think this is really, really interesting and could be in the trap game conversation. I mean, literally, if Kansas State just didn't lose to Army, I don't know if I would consider this a trap game, but there's too many ingredients in here for me to say that I can't say definitively that Texas Tech isn't overlooking this. We understand the ramifications for this game. Yeah. But I don't know if Texas Tech feels the same way.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, can the Texas Tech offense get back on track? I mean, if you look at their offense, Trev, their first 7 games, they went for 608, 601, 599, 484 in a road win, a 34-10 road win at Utah, 552 in a 35-11 road win over Houston, and that's the only loss Houston has, 505 against Kansas. Well, the last 2 games, with Morton banged up, Hammond banged up, they went for 276 against Arizona State and only 370 against Oklahoma State. And the big thing is their run game just fell off a cliff. They went for 294, 230, only 121 against Oregon State, partly because they were throwing so well. 173 against Utah, 207 against Houston, 372 against Kansas. Last 2 weeks against Arizona State and Oklahoma, they went for 109 and 86 the last 2 games. So they against Oklahoma State, it wasn't that they threw the ball all over the place. They ran the ball 40 times and got 88 yards against Oklahoma State. They got to figure out some things to get their run game back on track. That's going to be a big, big part of this game because their offense was rolling through the first 7 games of the year, Trev, or 6 games of the year, rolling. And then they just fell off a cliff real fast. Does Baron Morton coming back solidify that, even if he's not 100%? We're going to find out. But it's a dangerous spot, too, because this is a Kansas State defense that's been very opportunistic these last couple games, Trev, and it has been delivering a lot of punishment the last couple games, just playing more physical. I'd be a little bit nervous about Baron Morton maybe taking some shots in this game, but very fascinating game this weekend. A lot on the table, man. A lot on the table.
What do you got for a prediction, Brian? Who do you see winning this one?
Man, I've been back and forth. I'm going K-State 34-28 because they're at home. I think it's going to be one of the better games this weekend. I just think Morton's going to be a little bit rusty because he's missed basically a month. And I think you're going to see him just with a couple mistakes that are going to keep them from winning this game. I don't feel great about it, honestly, Trev. I'm not like, lock it, K-State with the upset. I don't feel great about it, but I just like how this K-State's team is playing. And I'll be honest, for me, it's confirmation bias. It's like, okay, that's the team I thought they were going to be the last couple weeks. And if they were the team we thought they were going to be, then of course we're all picking them to win because they're at home, right? Like if they would have done what they needed to do in the second half against Iowa State and done what they needed to do against Army, done what they needed to do to bury Baylor at the end of the game, they're up 31-17 going to the fourth quarter. We're sitting there like, well, K-State's a team that we're worried about. We may be rooting for Texas Tech to pull off the upset in this game. So I just think this K-State team is starting to figure it out. And Texas Tech is a team that offensively is a little bit in a fragile place right now. So I could see it going either way, but I'm going with the Wildcats in this game, Trev. I think Chris Kleiman needs this game bad to keep the hot seat from kind of turning up a little bit because this has been a very disappointing season for that team.
I also have the Kansas State Wildcats 31-28 in this one. I think this is a trap game for Texas Tech. And this is a program that is they have newfound success, in my opinion. You know, like they're a relatively young football team. They have a lot of transfer portal players that are making significant contributions to the team, I might add. But this is one where it's like, okay, like we've seen a history of teams not being able to live in the okay, act like you've been here before type of situations. And that's what this is for Texas Tech. What is the maturity level of this team? Are you able to not overlook a very talented Kansas State team and look forward to being back at home against a top 10 opponent in BYU that you have the opportunity to continue building your resume on? I think that's what this goes down to. I don't know if Texas Tech is going to look at Kansas State as a resume builder, despite their obvious talent on both sides of the ball. And for Kansas State right now, I think they're playing really good complementary football. They're in a spot where their offense doesn't have to go out and score 40 points a game because, like you said, they've scored 3 defensive touchdowns over the last couple of weeks. So I like Kansas State in this one, 31-28. You're not alone in that prediction.
What's interesting, Trev, is obviously Kansas State's not going to have Dylan Edwards for this game. He's out for this game. It'll be the third straight game that he's missed. But I thought this was interesting. In games in which he has played this season, they're 1-3. Kansas State's 1-3. The only game they won was with him going off against UCF. But he really has struggled to get going this season. It's really hurt them. And I think the uncertainty of his availability in the past it kept them from really figuring out how they wanted to build their offense. And I think with him out and just kind of knowing he's out, they've been forced to, build more around Joe Jackson, build more around Avery Johnson. And that's, I think, helped them solidify. I'm not saying they're better without him. I'm simply saying the fact that he's been out has allowed them to just say, look, we're, coming, he's out, he's in, he's out, he's in, has allowed them to say, okay, this is who we are now. If Dylan comes back, great. We'll fit him into what we're doing, but we've got to build around something different right now. And I think that's helped them find a little bit of a rhythm, having that in there. If they can win this game and eventually get Dylan Edwards back, then K-State could be a team you don't want to play in November. But we'll see how that goes in this game.
I'm with you. Avery Johnson's also been electric the last couple of weeks too.
Yeah,
that guy's been absolutely dialed. He's been fun to watch, man. Been fun to watch. Next game we're talking about, hopping over to the Big Ten, number 23 USC, sitting at 5-2 on the year, is playing on the road against Nebraska, who is 6-2 but unranked inside of Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. Kickoff 7:30 p.m. on NBC. Right now, the Trojans are favored by 6.5 points. The over/under is set at 58.5 on FanDuel.
I actually have the over in my prediction. I just looked at my prediction. I have the over in this one. I love this matchup, Trev. It's two teams that have gotten a lot of media hype the last couple of years, only to disappoint. And this is a chance for one of these two teams to say, no, we're past that. We're a legit good football team. USC leads this all-time series 5-0-1. Nebraska has never beaten USC in 6 meetings. USC won in 1969, 2006, 2007, 2014, and then, of course, last year they met for the first time as conference opponents in the Big Ten. USC won 28-20. This is a big game for both teams, Trev, because both teams are still fighting for. I mean, they're still in the conversation to get to the Big 12 title or to earn that coveted 3rd, 4th, and 5th potential Big Ten, playoff slots from the Big Ten. Right now, you and I believe there's 3 teams that are above everybody else, but we also both believe there's 2 teams above the 3rd team, which would be Oregon. Ohio State, Indiana are clearly the top team. Oregon is down there, and Oregon's got some tough games coming up, and Nebraska and USC both have a chance. The one thing that USC has going in its favor right now, as far as building a playoff resume, is they have quality losses on top of one quality win already, that being over Michigan. Their 2 losses being a 2-point loss to Illinois and then a 10-point loss at Notre Dame in a game where USC had a first half lead and was within 3 points in the 4th quarter. Notre Dame could have beat them by more, but didn't, and USC stayed in that game. They got a convincing home win over Michigan. This is the kind of game where if they can get a road win over Nebraska, they've got Northwestern at home, Iowa at home, at Oregon, home against UCLA. It's a very tough slate. for USC. But it's the kind of slate that if they can run the table, absolutely puts them in the college football playoff, deservedly so, potentially fighting for a home spot. Because they could shoot way up the rankings with a road win over Nebraska, a home win over Iowa, and a road win over Oregon. It's going to be tough, but it's possible. When you look at Nebraska's resume, Trev, they're in a little bit of a different situation because they don't have some of those great wins so far. Their losses are not great. They got beat convincingly by Michigan or Minnesota. They also lost at home to Michigan, but they do have a win over a ranked Cincinnati team. So if they can beat USC, and then they still have UCLA on the road, then a bye, then Penn State on the road, and then a home game against Iowa right after Thanksgiving into the season. There's an outside shot right now for Nebraska to run the table and get in. I think USC has the better odds at 10-2 than Nebraska does, but this could give Nebraska that second really good win ahead of the Iowa game that allows them to say, hey, we belong in this conversation as well. So I think that's really what's at stake. It's an elimination game for whoever loses. Whoever wins gets a big notch on their belt as they look to build a playoff-worthy resume.
What takes today, man? USC has shown that they can't travel east in the Big Ten and have success. And unfortunately for Nebraska, there's a little double-digit number next to USC's name that they're going to see on the scoreboard. And that means they're ranked, and that's something that Nebraska hasn't gotten in almost 10 seasons. Nebraska hasn't gotten a ranked win since 2016. What takes the day? Is it USC traveling, something that they have shown that they can't do, travel out east when it's going to be cold? Just looked at the weather. I think it's a high of 48 degrees on Saturday in Lincoln, Nebraska. Or can Nebraska finally get over the hump and beat a ranked opponent? I think that is fascinating for this storyline. Absolutely fascinating. Very curious to see how that plays out.
I just love in this climate of people complaining about buyouts and contracts and bad contracts that Nebraska gave an extension to the coach with 0 wins over top 25 teams in 3 years in Nebraska. I just think that's hilarious. But that's what they did because they were afraid Penn State was going to steal them. I would have almost been like, okay, give us whatever our buyout is and take him and we'll go get another coach. But it is a huge opportunity for Matt Rule, though. This is the kind of game, Trev, if you can win this game where you can make a bit of a statement over USC and just in the Big Ten in general. And on the recruiting trail, I mean, just program-wide, and if it is your first win over a ranked team, you want it to be a brand, not an upset win over Illinois. You know, who doesn't mean they're not a good team, but it just doesn't have the same kind of, like statement to recruits, to your fan base, to your donors, to the nation, than beating a team like a Michigan had they been able to pull that one off, which they couldn't do. A team like USC, which they couldn't do. So huge opportunity. And then I love what you pointed out for USC. This is your chance to say, hey, we can play in the Big Ten. We can play on the road. We can go out east. We can play in the cold. We're not going to punk out and just because it's 48, not want to play. And it's a huge opportunity for Lincoln Riley to show that my team's not soft. You want to keep saying we're a tough football team. Okay, prove it. You're going to Lincoln. You're going it's going to be cold. You got to bounce back from a loss in Notre Dame. Prove that you're not soft. You personally, and then prove that your football team is not soft. You win this game, and all of a sudden people are like, you know what? This is a good USC team. Yeah, they lost to Notre Dame. That's one of the hottest teams in college football. And they were way more competitive against Notre Dame than anybody else was. Yeah, they lost to Illinois, but they, in all fairness, they were missing a bunch of very important players in that game injury-wise and still almost won that game. You win this game on the road, you kind of make a statement that, no, this is not last year's USC team. This is not 2023 USC. We're a good football team, and the thing I think that helps USC is if they can get back to it, other than the Notre Dame game, which I think is an anomaly because Notre Dame's got a really good run defense, USC's run the ball really well this season. That's what travels. That's what helps you in the cold. They're going to have to find a way to establish a ground game and not put all the pressure on Jaden Maeva to carry you to victory. If they can establish a ground game, I like USC in this matchup. If they can't, then I'm feeling a little bit better about Nebraska being maybe able to pull this one off as well. And then on the other side of the ball, it's the same thing. If Nebraska can't establish a run game against what's been a pretty salty USC run defense, if you can pretend the Notre Dame game didn't happen, it's been a salty run defense prior to that, If that run defense can bounce back and play a little bit ticked off with a chip on their shoulder, you want to put this game on Dylan Raiola's shoulders if you're USC. You want to make him beat you. And I don't know that he can. So it's going to be a fascinating back and forth matchup. I really believe that.
Well, let's give some predictions for this game, Bryan, and I'll get us kicked off here. I think USC is somewhat of an underrated team. And I don't think, and I'm glad that you pointed this out, I don't think that their rush defense against Notre Dame is indicative of how they are as a team. I think that game was the outlier. And unfortunately, USC just in that game played the best running back duo in the best running back room in the country by a wide margin. I don't think that that's indicative of what their rush defense is. I think Nebraska is not going to get up. They're not going to be able to end their streak of losing to ranked opponents.
Didn't it kind of look like they were trying to get cute because they knew that Notre Dame's run game was getting them problems and they were doing things that they didn't normally do? Yep. And that got them out of position at times. I just thought they tried to do some funky stuff that knowing they couldn't stop them otherwise, and it just cost them.
Yep, I thought so too. I definitely thought so too. So I have USC winning this one 27-20. I see it being relatively back and forth, but it's one of those where like USC has a comfortable lead and then like Nebraska battles back. I see it one of those being where Nebraska never goes away, but neither team really ever pulls ahead too much. But I think Lincoln Riley gets a good win in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I'm sorry, I just can't help that somebody just said Dylan Mahomes in the chat. So messed up. I have USC actually winning even more comfortably than that. I have USC winning 35-24. I do think their run game gets going. I think Nebraska's pass defense is going to really struggle with the USC pass game. I do. I'm someone who believes that competition can kind of play a role in how you look. And Nebraska has not played a competent pass offense like in a while. The only good one they played, and my only decent one they played, in my opinion, was Maryland. And they gave up 249 yards to a freshman quarterback in a 34-31 win. Akron's not a very good throwing team. Cincinnati's not a very good throwing team. Michigan's not a very good throwing team. Michigan State's just been a train wreck lately. Minnesota's kind of up and down. Northwestern's not a good throwing team. USC's a different animal, and I think that's going to hurt Nebraska a little bit. I also think playing Nebraska's secondary after playing Notre Dame's secondary and defense is just going to look a lot easier for USC.
Yeah, Mekhi Lemon's not going to be going up against Leonard Moore on set.
They don't have anybody that can do that. They can just say, hey, we're going to put you on Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah.
So I actually really like USC in this game. I got the Trojans winning 35-24. Could I see Nebraska winning? Of course, Nebraska could win this football game, but I like USC. And I'll say this, if they lose this football game, yeah, Nebraska's a quality team, but at some point in time, you got to say, dude, you're in year 4, and you can't build your team up well enough to beat Nebraska on the road. You're going to have to start asking some real seriously tough questions about, did we make the right decision going into the Big Ten? We literally can't go east and win at all.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we're playing like Purdue. You'll now be 1-3 on the road this season, heading to the Midwest or the East Coast, with your only win being an ugly, sloppy win over over Purdue. And this is after you went 0-3 on the road going east last year, with your only road wins last year being at UCLA. And you also lost at Washington, but that's a little bit of a different animal. So it's going to be a real tough one. If they can't win this game, now you're like, well, you got no shot against Oregon. Now you're staring at another 8-4, 7-5 season if you're USC. So I think this is a huge, huge game for Lincoln Riley, because if you can't beat Nebraska, it's not a given you're going to beat Iowa. And you're definitely not going to beat Oregon. So you could be staring at another 7-5 season, and all of a sudden Lincoln Riley is on a red-hot seat out in L.A. So I think it's a huge, huge game for Lincoln Riley as well, Trev.
Before we get to the last game, real quick, I think it is crazy that James Franklin got fired 10 months removed from being in the college football playoff semifinals. And Matt Rule just got a 2-year extension, is over Seriously. Against ranked teams. How crazy is that?
And because the team that fired James Franklin wanted to hire him, allegedly, to be their head coach. So dumb.
Oh, stuff is just
So
backwards
dumb.
sometimes, man.
It really
Oh,
is.
it's so crazy. That is so crazy. Well, besides the point, last game we're taking a deep dive into here, Brian. Traveling over to the SEC. Night game in Rocky Top, number 18, Oklahoma, 6-2 on the year. It's on the road in Neyland Stadium against number 14, the Tennessee Volunteers. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Right now, the Vols are favored by 3.5 points, and the over-under is set at 55.5. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, this is a game that Oklahoma's their second matchup as conference foes. Oklahoma leads the all-time series 3-2, but Tennessee got the first win against conference foes. That was last year. They won 25-15 in Norman. This is another one of those elimination games, Trev. This is both of these teams still have a shot to get an at-large bid in the college football playoff. If you can win this game, the loser is going to be home for the playoff. And that's, I mean, you want to talk about what's on the line? That's really what's on the line. I think there's a little bit more to it than that also, especially for Oklahoma. It's interesting. Brent Venables had some very interesting things to say this past week. Said, I thought we were the better team. And I'm like, that sounds like you're trying to convince yourself of something, because that's not what I saw when I watched the television. I watched Ole Miss basically outplay you for almost the entire game. So I don't know what you were watching, but that just sounded a little bit like you're trying to convince yourself of something. And look, I just don't think Oklahoma fans are going to be too keen on, Brent Venables hanging around. He's another guy in year 4. He's had 2 losing seasons so far, 2 6-7 seasons. You lost to Navy in a bowl game last year. A lot of high expectations this year, top 20 team, everybody hyping your team up. You got John Mateer. You beat Michigan early in the season. Now you've lost 2 of 3. And you lost one of them on a neutral field to your rival, who's not very good, by 17. And then you lost at home last week to an Ole Miss team with all the rumors about their coach going somewhere else in a game where, honestly, they were the better team. You finally got the run game going for a little bit, broke off a long run, but Ole Miss was the better team in that game. And so now you're sitting there, your last 4 games, you play at Tennessee, at Alabama, home against Missouri, home against LSU. Brent Venables' career at Oklahoma is on the line this weekend, in my opinion. This is the kind of win that can kind of salvage feelings about you. You lose this game, you're now 1-3 in your last 4. You possibly drop out of the top 25, and your next game's in Tuscaloosa. Like, that's tough. That's tough. And for Tennessee, can you make back-to-back playoff games? This could be your biggest hurdle remaining, Trev. They're a lot like Ole Miss, where their final stretch is good, but it's including Oklahoma, it's a good final stretch, but it's not super tough. They have Oklahoma this weekend, then they have a bye, then they host New Mexico State, then they're at Florida, then they host Vanderbilt. If Tennessee can win this game, they've got a great shot of running the table and getting a second straight playoff berth, while Nico Iamaleava sits at home during the playoffs watching his UCLA team, not getting a bowl game. So huge game for both teams. Playoff implications for both, but there's a little bit more at stake for Oklahoma beyond just playoffs. Brent Venables is coaching for his life, so to speak, this weekend, in my opinion.
How storybook is it, though, that the thing that kind of holds Brent Venables' career at Oklahoma in the balance is going to be the performance of the Oklahoma defense?
Yep.
I think that's very poetic. I mean, in all seriousness, this Tennessee offense has been absolutely rolling this year. They scored 56 against Kentucky. Alabama's defense did a good job of shutting them down. They scored 20. Scored 34 against Arkansas, 41 against Mississippi State, 41 against Georgia, 72 against Eastern Tennessee State, 45 against Syracuse. They scored 56 against UAB. Then on the other side of the ball, you have a defense that they didn't even allow an opponent to score over 20 points until this past weekend against Ole Miss. Scored 34. Held South Carolina to 7. Oh, I'm sorry. They also allowed 23 to Texas. But one of those was a punt return, wasn't it? They had a return. So really, they have yet to allow an opposing offense before this past weekend to score over 20 points. shut out Kent State. Auburn was held to 17. Temple was held to 3. Michigan was held to 13. Illinois State was held to 3. And so this is the matchup of the weekend for them. Oklahoma's defense versus Tennessee's high-powered offense. That's going to be absolutely huge in this one. Absolutely huge.
They're going to have to be a lot better on defense than they were last week against Ole Miss. An Ole Miss offense that honestly is not as good as the Tennessee offense. I mean, you just put up all the point totals, Trev, and that sounds great. Here's some context to make it even better. Their lowest yardage total of the season this year is 410 at Alabama. The only time they've been held under 6.47 per play, the only time they've been below that was 5.3 against Alabama. I mean, so like they went for 496 yards, 7.1 yards per play against Georgia. So, I mean, this has been a typical Josh Heupel offense. And this is kind of what I thought we would see before the season. I said, I really like Joey Aguilar in this offense. I think he fits this offense really well. And honestly, there's not a ton of great defenses in the SEC this year either, Trev. And they certainly haven't played the good ones on there. So, I think they are a team that throws the ball really well. They spread the ball around really well. They have 4 guys with at least 23 catches. They have 3 guys with over 500 receiving yards. Chris Brazell's having the breakout that everybody thought he would have. Mike Matthews, former big-time recruits, had a really good year for them. Their defense is good enough in most games. With Texas struggling on offense like they have, I mean, you mentioned all the great job they've done keeping teams down. I'll say this. I mean, they've only scored over 26 points 3 times. That was against Kent State, Temple, and Illinois State. This offense has just been bad. And a big part of it is that, they haven't been able to run the football. It's just Oklahoma right now is averaging 21.2 points in 5 games against Power 4 teams this year. Like that's just not going to get it done, Trev. And a big part of that is because this team they've just lost their ability to develop good offensive lines. They ranked 86 in college football this year in rushing yards against Power 4 opponents. They're averaging 105 rushing yards per game against Power 4 opponents. Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma, with all their great history of running backs and great offensive line play and just, I mean, Billy Sims, Marcus Dupree, all the way up to the Chris Brown, DeMarco Murray, or they both rushed for 1,000 yards. I mean, Adrian Peterson. I mean, all the great rushing teams they've had, and you can't in 4 years find a way to run the football in Oklahoma. They're averaging 130 yards this year. They were 155. I mean, they were bad running the ball last year, Trev, and they're worse this year. Like, that's just nuts to me. It really is nuts to me. And the only reason they're even where they are is because they went for 228 yards against Temple. They went for 185 against Kent State. They went for 32 against Auburn, 103 against Illinois State. They went for 136 last week. Half of that was on 1 carry. I mean, they had 1 big run because of a bad run fit by Ole Miss. Other than that, they couldn't run the ball at all against Ole Miss. So they're I'm still stunned, and it's not lack of talent. They got Jay Knott. We saw last week that big boy can run, man. When he gets actual room to run, he can run. And John Mateer, you said that their offense has not looked the same since Mateer got hurt, and that wasn't even a very good offense before he got hurt. You are correct; it's really struggled since he's been hurt, but they weren't even that good of an offense before he got hurt. And they come out real well early and then just sputter. And it's a problem. It's a big problem.
It's your typical case of strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness. I mean, it is. What's going to take the day? Can Oklahoma's offense figure it out against Tennessee's defense, who, as impressive as Tennessee's offensive output has been, some of the games that I rattled off, they had to score in the 40s. I mean, they scored 41 points against Georgia and lost. I mean, you can't score 41 points and still lose by 3. That's definitely not on the offense. That's not on Joey Aguilar and the Vols offense. That's for sure. Here's the battle to watch in the strength on strength of Tennessee's offense versus Oklahoma's defense. According to Pro Football Focus, Oklahoma's defensive line through the season so far has 171 total pressures and 52 total hits plus sacks on the quarterback this year. That is nuts. Absolutely nuts. On the flip side of the coin, though, Tennessee's offense has only allowed 12 hits plus sacks on the quarterback this year. That battle is going to be very decisive in who wins this. Trench warfare in this one. The Tennessee offensive line versus the Oklahoma defensive line is going to be awesome. If you just appreciate good football the way that Bryan and I do, and you appreciate two best on best units going at it, that one's going to be crazy to watch. But I echo everything that you said about Oklahoma's offense. But with the way that their defense is, one of the reasons why they're still hovering around the playoff conversation, the reason why they're still ranked inside of the top 20 in the country is because their defense is legit. Their defense is awesome. And unfortunately, their offense just hasn't been doing it justice, Bryan, unfortunately. But how do you see this one playing out?
I have Tennessee coasting in this game. I do. I think it'll be the Oklahoma defense will keep them in it, somewhat in it early. I just have no faith in the Oklahoma offense. I think Tennessee pulls away late, 34-17. It'll be a lot like this weekend against Ole Miss. The defense will be playing well, keeping the scores down. It's a close game, and then they'll have some dumb turnover, some failures to convert on 4th and 1 because you can't run the ball. So you got to make these dumb play calls on 4th and 1. And just I have no faith in this offense. Like you said, Trev, you're not going to score 26 or 24 to 26 points and expect to beat Tennessee. I mean, you're just not going to do it. So, what did you say that the two games they lost? They only scored 20. They only scored 20 against Alabama, right?
Yes.
Okay? But like in every other game they played, they've scored at least 34 points in every other game they've played. So, we'll see how that goes. But to your point, the hope is that you can get after the quarterback. That's going to be your hope, because that could maybe Joey Aguilar, he'll turn the ball over a little bit if you can pressure him, because like most quarterbacks. But can you make him one-dimensional? That's the other thing. So I don't have a lot of faith in it. But even if you do that, you hold him to 24 points. You did a great job defensively. That may not be enough to win with the way your offense has been playing. And that's where my prediction comes from, Trev. I'm Tennessee 34, Oklahoma 17.
I have Tennessee winning this one as well, 31-21, and I also have Oklahoma scoring last. I don't see this being overly close either. I'm with you.
That's not good. That'll be I'm very curious to see if they lose this game, what is the sentiment coming out of Norman in regard to Brent Venables? Like, does it start to heat up even more? I mean, there's been some sentiment about him. What is it like coming out of this game? And then especially if you then go and lose to Alabama, what does that look like? Because you lose this game, you get to let it stew for a week. One in your last three, 2 in a row, stews for a week. Then you've got to go to Tuscaloosa. Next thing you know, Trev, you're 6-4. You've lost 4 of your last 5 games. What does that do for Brent Venables?
Yeah. Not good. Not good for sure. Bryan, there's a couple of games here that we're just going to briefly talk about. Just some other games to keep your eye out on. Some of these are going to be pretty quick to run through. Some of them we've already talked about. First one, Bryan, is a noon kickoff. And it is, and you and I were talking about this when we put the outline together. Who would have thought that this would have been a game that we would have just talked about in passing? How crazy is that?
We almost decided not to talk about it. That's wild. We're talking about, obviously, Penn State at number 1, Ohio State. We were talking about this last night, and Trev was like, I want to at least bring this up. But we were honestly leaning towards not even bringing it up. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the year? That Penn State, Ohio State game would be just Ohio State's going to win that one against a bad team. Move on. Let's focus on something else. It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. The only reason why I wanted to bring this up, not the only reason, but there's a couple different reasons why I wanted to bring this up. Ohio State has looked good. They've looked dominant at times, and their defense is absolutely insane. Penn State does still have talent. And I'm not talking about it in the same context of Boston College, like they have individual pieces of talent. Like they have talent across the board. There's a reason why I ranked them as my number 1 preseason team, and Bryan ranked them as his number 3 preseason team. And no, it was not because of James Franklin being their head coach. It was because they still had Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. It's because they rebuilt their receivers through the transfer portal. It's because they returned almost all their starters on the offensive line. It's because they still had Zane Durant and denied Dennis Sutton and experience at the second and third level of their defense. I am curious to see, though, what this will look like, because right now Ohio State is favored by 20.5 points. That's on crazy. FanDuel. It is. It is.
I mean, it's not crazy in that it's an unfair thing. It's where it should be. It's crazy that we're in a position that it's a 20.5 point spread.
It is very interesting. And look, I understand, to your point, I understand why the spread is the way that it is. Penn State is yet to beat a Power 4 opponent, and I don't think they're going to this weekend or the weekend after that when they play IU.
Doesn't get easier for Penn State.
It does not. Having to play the number 1 and number 2 team in the country back to back is that's a bad beat. That's for sure. And I understand why the spread is the way that it is. Ohio State has only allowed 1 team to score in the double digits. But with that being said, this game between Penn State and Ohio State has not been a 3-touchdown game since 2015. That includes even in 2020 when Penn State was kind of this bad and Ohio State went to the playoffs. And so I
went to the title game.
Yeah. I'll talk about that later tonight in the spread option. But man, the one reason why I wanted to talk about this is so Ohio State doesn't overlook this opponent, because this is still a quality talent team. Now, how do they respond? Drew Aller's no longer there. They don't have a head coach anymore. They get them at home. But again, I just wanted to mention it because I thought the spread was pretty insane. I also wanted to mention it too because Penn State's over-under in points total is 11, which I get.
That's exactly where it should be. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy in that I can't believe we're here. It's not crazy in that it's wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're wrong. I just, I mean, look, you're right. Oh, Penn State has a ton of NFL talent still left on that team. But there's something epically broken within that program, and I don't think Franklin being gone fixes it.
No.
I think Ohio State stomps Penn State in this game, but it is in a weird year. It is kind of just wouldn't it be like so poetic if the first time that Penn State beats Ohio State since 2016 was after they fired James Franklin? Because Trev, you brought up the 2020 game. I remember watching that game, and Penn State was toying with Ohio State in that game. I mean, that they were like Ohio State was toying with Penn State in that game. They won by 13. They could have won by 30 if they wanted to. The next year, at home against a Penn State team that went 7-6, Ohio State only won by 9 at home. So, and that was a team that lost to Illinois and Iowa coming into that game, lost to Michigan, lost to Michigan State, lost to Arkansas. Like, that was not a very good Penn State team that year either, and they lost by 9. Yeah. I think this is a blowout, but man, it's just wild that we're here. But I just think it would be it's not going to, I'll be shocked if it happens, but I just think it would be just so incredibly poetic if the first game against Ohio State in Columbus after firing James Franklin is a Nittany line upset.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State, if they can score 50, will score 50. I don't know if you're capable of it, but there's definitely some not good feelings between Ryan Day and Jim Knowles. And so I think Ohio State will be pretty locked into this one. Like, that's the bad thing for Penn State. It's not like they're going to overlook you for their next game. They're going to want a little heat. Although you could say Ryan Day hasn't actually been very good in games where they have desired payback other than Oregon last year. But it's going to be fascinating to see how this game plays out.
Next game we already briefly mentioned when we were talking about the Notre Dame segment, 12 p.m. kickoff on ESPN, number 10 Miami on the road against SMU. Miami is currently favored by 12.5 points, Brian. I know this is one you wanted to touch on as well.
Yeah, just briefly, I think with Miami, it's can they kind of find their groove back, right? Like the last really since the USF game, their offense has really kind of struggled to find their footing. I think Florida kind of harassed them a little bit. They had some missed opportunities. They started well against Florida State, then kind of sputtered in the second half. Couldn't figure anything out against Florida, against Louisville. Only scored 7 points in the first half against a bad Stanford team at home, and wearing fatigues, which was super lame, by the way. And I'm like, didn't you guys lose the bowl game where you wore the fatigues back in the day? Didn't they lose that game? Wasn't that when they went to play Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl and they lost? Pretty sure it is. But and just didn't play well. They're a better team than they've shown the last couple weeks. Can they figure that out and get back to being that team against SMU, who is just not the team we thought they were going to be early in the season? Their offense has been okay, hasn't been great. Kevin Jennings, we've a lot of Notre Dame fans have been like, oh, Notre Dame ruined. They broke Drew Aller. I'm like, well, yeah, he hasn't been the same quarterback since then. I think Penn State broke Kevin Jennings. He has not been the same kid since he was awful in that semifinal game. And they're just not the same team. Their defense is scrappy, but they lost a lot of talent from last year. They just lost on the road against Wake Forest in one of the ugliest games I've ever watched in my life. I think this is a game that you need Miami to kind of get back on track offensively. And if they can, then I think Miami's got a shot to roll down the stretch. If they can't, then they make themselves not only capable of losing this one, but even more so capable of losing some of their final games against Tech on the road and Pitt on the road, teams like that. So they're going to have to find some answers on offense, and I think this is a good defense to do that against.
Another game you wanted to talk about, Brian, sticking in the ACC, Duke Blue Devils on the road against the Clemson Tigers, 12 p.m. kickoff on the ACC network. Interesting one. I did not have it on my bingo card that Duke was going to have a better record than Clemson entering this matchup, but here we are.
We are. Trev, I want to just mention this game because I do think this is a big game for Dabo. There's not a lot of pressure on them right now. They went through a really rough stretch to start the season, lost 3 of their first 4. They had 2 blowout wins to it looked like they were getting back on track. And then you get SMU at home and they get smacked by SMU. And you're just like, this is a reeling football team. If they lose at home to Duke, you're like, okay, it's done. The Dabo era is officially over. Now it's just a matter of when. I think they need a win like this to try to somehow salvage their season. Because if you look at what Clemson has coming up, they win this game, they improve to 4-4, then they get Florida State at home. They play at Louisville, home against Furman, at South Carolina. Those are all winnable games if Clemson can play Clemson football. And for Duke, if you're Manny Diaz, this is the kind of win improve you to 5-3 on the season. And you got UConn coming up, Virginia at home coming up, North Carolina, Wake Forest. All of a sudden, Duke could maybe finish 9-3, and Manny Diaz's name starts getting mentioned a little bit more for some of these open jobs as we get through this to the end of the season. So I think it's a very fascinating game. Shouldn't have any impact on any league rankings or anything like that, but just more so the direction of these two programs and head coaches is something that's on the line in this game.
Agreed. I will be very interested to see what happens down at Clemson if they're not able to pull this one out. Very, very interested. Jumping all the way to the night slot, 7 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. South Carolina is on the road against number 7 Ole Miss, who's coming off of a big win against Oklahoma on the road in Norman last week, 34-26. And then South Carolina, like we said, gave Alabama a run for their money, but they weren't able to close the deal, Brian. Weren't able to close the deal.
Trev, this game interests me because I really am curious about the emotion, like the psyche of both football teams and for completely different opposite directions. Ole Miss, it's like, hey, you had a huge win last weekend. Huge win. Going on the road and beating Oklahoma last weekend in a game where, all week there's all these rumblings about Lane Kiffin's going to take the Florida job. And, they were coming off of a tough loss to Georgia in a game that they were in control. They had a couple ugly wins before that. You go on the road, get a big win. You're against a reeling South Carolina team. You got to ask yourself, like, where are they at psyche-wise? Are they going to kind of be feeling good about themselves, a little too big for their britches. Hey, we're Ole Miss, we're dominant, we're playing a not very good South Carolina team. Our playoff ticket has been written. Our playoff ticket has been punched, and we're cruising. And then you don't take South Carolina serious, and South Carolina beat you. For South Carolina, the question is, you're reeling. You absolutely blew that game last weekend. You had a great chance to upset Alabama, had outplayed them all game, and you just choked the game away. Fumbling the ball, just getting it ripped out of your hands. You can't make stops. And then the decision to allow Alabama to score a touchdown. And now maybe that's just Shane Beamer covering for a player who made a decision that was wrong, thinking just let him sort of get the ball back. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it didn't look like anybody else for South Carolina was looking to stop Alabama on that play. Instead of trying to get a stop and forcing Alabama's kicker, who's a very average kicker, to beat you, I just don't understand that at all. So it is what it is. But you lose this game, Trev, you're now 3-6. You still have to play Texas A&M on the road in Clemson. That seat starts getting super hot for Shane Beamer if this season goes down the tank, goes in the tank. However, this is the kind of road upset win that can maybe salvage your season. You win this game, you get to 4-5. You lose next week to A&M, or in 2 weeks to A&M. Okay, you're 4-6, but then you finish with Coastal Carolina and a win over Clemson. Yeah, it's a down season, but you're 6-6. You had 2 big wins late over Clemson, and you say, here's the spin. Hey, we took Alabama down to the wire. We went on the road and upset Ole Miss. We battled with Texas A&M for 4 quarters, and then we smacked Clemson in our final season. Yeah, it was a down season, but all our top guys are coming back. Blah 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 blah. We're gonna be fine. Keeps the heat down a little bit. You lose this game, and then you lose the next week's game, or in 2 weeks. Now all of a sudden, that heat, that temperature starts getting turned up real hot on Shane Beamer's seat a year after going 9-3. Yeah, not good.
No, I agree. This is going to be, big testament for both teams. I think Lane Kiffin, deserves a lot of credit for this season that Ole Miss has had too. He's getting them to play significantly above their level, especially after how much they lost after last season as well. But now you're going to have to test the maturity of your football team and if they can remain focused after picking up a really big win. I'm with you completely.
I would argue this is the best so far. This is the best coaching job he's done.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, this year's team doesn't have last year's team's talent, but they have way more heart and way more maturity as a team.
Agreed. Next game, Brian, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ESPN2. We talked about it already, but number 8 Georgia Tech on the road against NC State. Georgia Tech is favored by 5.5.
This is an interesting game, Trev, because Georgia Tech, you look at their season and how they're doing a great job. Like, they're winning ugly, they're winning impressively, they're doing it both ways. Terrible start against Colorado, multiple turnovers. You still hang on to win that game. You win a back and forth battle with Clemson. You win an overtime game against Wake where you pick the guy off as he's going for the win on 2-point conversion. Nice win over Virginia Tech, convincing road win over Duke. You've now blown out Syracuse. You're starting to play better football the last few weeks. You have a couple more potential stumbling blocks in front of you, though. This NC State game on the road, you should be able to beat BC on the road. And then you've got a home game against Pitt. You win this game, and now it's basically Pitt's the only thing standing between you and an undefeated record going into Georgia. And if you're undefeated going into Georgia, you're a lock for the playoffs, in my opinion. Like a lock. And so this could be the toughest game remaining of those. You got to go on the road. This is a team that can really throw the football, meaning before the Pitt game. And, NC State's that dangerous team that they're not a good football team. They're not coached very well. It's like what we always say, nobody does less with more than Dave Doran in the ACC. It really is kind of embarrassing how he just wastes talent so often. But he's also a guy that every now and then will just kind of pull that rabbit out of his hat with a big win, an upset win, and this is his chance to do that. But if you're Georgia Tech, you got to hold serve. I don't care if it's by a point. You got to go on the road and get this win. If you do that, you're coasting into that Pitt game 10-0 with a shot to basically lock a playoff berth. Huge game for them. You lose this game, now all of a sudden you're fighting for your playoff life. In 2 of your last 3 games. So that's what I'm very interested to see how this particular game goes.
Yeah, how they handle it for sure. I do have Georgia Tech winning this one. I also have them winning it kind of by a favorable margin. I like the team that Georgia Tech is starting to become. I do, because to your point, they've won in multiple different ways. And as dangerous as NC State has the potential to be, they've won 1 game in their last 5, and it was against Campbell at home. The biggest benefit going in their direction in my eyes is the fact that they get Georgia Tech at home. And they don't have to travel for this one. And it's been disappointing. I'm not saying that as a shot at NC State. I'm saying that it's a disappointment because of the fact that you have CJ Bailey and Justin Jolly and Hollywood Smothers. It's unfortunate. I'm with you.
Yep. Way too much talent for that team to be as bad as they are.
Yeah. Way too much. Sticking in the ACC, Brian, Wake Forest is on the road against Florida State, 7:30 p.m. on the ACC network. Is this one where are you kind of thinking along the lines that like Mike Norvell's kind of starting to fight for his life here a little bit?
Yeah. This is a good Wake Forest team for the ACC. Let me rephrase. This is a really scrappy Wake Forest team. This team competes. They do, and they win ugly, but they win. They're 5-2 right now. They had a home loss to NC State back when NC State was still playing good football. And then they have a home loss to Georgia Tech where they lost in overtime, where they had a shot. If you convert that 2-point conversion, you win that game. How'd they respond to those back-to-back losses? They went on the road and beat Virginia Tech. They went on the road and blew out Oregon State. They come home and just have an ugly game, but they do all the things they need to do at the end of that game to hold on and beat SMU. And the new coach this year is 5-2. And you're going to Florida State. Look, Florida State right now can lose to anybody. That's a broken team. And you're hearing reports about players kind of like mocking the coach for about responding to adversity. This is what happens when you build through the portal year after year. You have no culture. The new transfers are coming into no established culture at all. And when things go down the tank, like when everybody's locked in and you're winning and you beat Alabama and everybody's locked in, you look great. But as soon as adversity hits, all these mercenaries scatter. And they're not locked in. They're not bought into to any type of culture that was established when you got there. There's no established leadership on this football team. And at this point in time, Florida State could lose to everybody they play. I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm saying there's not a single game left on their schedule that makes me feel great about it. But here's the thing, Trev. They're 3-4. After this game, you got to play at Clemson, home against Virginia Tech, at NC State, at Florida. If you lose at home with Wake Forest, I was talking about this with Brian Smith the other day. If you lose this game at home to Wake Forest and fall to 3-5, I don't know that you win another game. And now Florida State in back-to-back years could go 2-10 and 3-9. And the wins would be over Cal, Charleston Southern, East Texas A&M, Kent State, and Alabama. It's nuts. You know what I mean? They outplayed Bama for 60 minutes, and they've looked like this. So this game is fascinating to me. Norvell's job could legitimately be on the line with how his team plays at home to Wake Forest. Because they say all they want. We're going to evaluate the whole season. You lose this game, what more evaluation do you need? Not that they're going to fire him now, but his time is over. Whether they fire him or not, he's done. He's a dead man walking. You could say maybe he's already that, but if you lose this game, his tenure at Florida State's over. He may still be the head coach next year, but his tenure at Florida State is over. There's some wounds you just don't recover from. And Wake Forest could be that for them this weekend, especially with what's coming down their schedule.
Last game, Brian. 10:15 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Number 17 Cincinnati on the road against number 24 Utah. And I know it's also the first ever matchup. First ever meeting between two teams in the same conference. Wild. Yeah. 3 years ago they were both in different. Neither of them were in the Big 12 3 years ago. I'm just very interested in this game. Is Cincinnati for real? That's kind of my question. Are they for real? They're 7-1. They had a shot at the end of the game to beat Nebraska. Couldn't do it. They've beaten Bowling Green,
Northwestern State, road win over Kansas, which is good. Beat Iowa State at home, UCF at home, at Oklahoma State, and then they're coming off a win over Baylor. Their last 2 games have been very convincing wins over Oklahoma State and Baylor. Going on the road against Utah, they expect Devin Dampier to be back for this game. I saw reported this morning. He looks like he'll be back for this game. I think I read that he's no longer on the injury report, so it sounds like he's going to play. I could be mistaken on that, but that's what I read this morning. It's a big win. It's a big opportunity for Cincinnati to continue their playoff hunt. They win this game, Trev. They improved to 8-1, and the rest of their schedule, they have Arizona at home, BYU at home, and at TCU. They have a very legitimate shot to lock in a playoff berth by the end of the regular season if they can go on the road and beat Utah. For Utah, this is a huge game for you as well, Trev, because you're not going to be the team that maybe some people thought you were, maybe win the Big 12. But you win this game, you improve to 7-2. You got to play at Baylor, home against K-State, at Kansas, all winnable games, some losable games. You're kind of fighting for Kyle Whittingham's future as well. It's looking great now, but if you lose 3 of your last 4, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, is his tenure kind of creeping to a close? So I think this is a bigger game for both teams than maybe we're thinking about. We know why it's big for Cincinnati. I still think this is pretty important for Utah as well. They need this game.
I think this is also a battle of legitimacy for Utah as well. I know you mentioned that, for Cincinnati, who are you? It's like, I think it's time to have a healthy conversation of who's Utah. At times they've looked good. But you go and you look at the best 3 opponents that they've played. They lost to Texas Tech, lost by 24 points. They lost to BYU on the road. And then the only other ranked win that you have is over Arizona State in a game that Sam Levitt didn't play in.
Right.
And they were going with Jeff Sims, who is just,
terrible.
He's on year 9 of college football and hasn't been good.
And he's never been good.
No.
He's never been good.
So I also think it's time to have a healthy conversation of, okay, who's Utah? When they've played inferior opponents, they boat raced them. 43-10 to UCLA, 63-9 against Cal Poly, 31-6 against Wyoming. They decimated Colorado in a game where that was just bad.
Wasn't 40-0 at halftime?
Yeah, it was terrible. That game could
respect for Kyle Whittingham. He could have really tried to embarrass Deion Sanders and his team.
Hung 80,
and he did
easily.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. So
that's not even hyperbolic. They literally had 40 at halftime.
Yeah. They could have absolutely decimated that. It was very much Notre Dame versus Purdue 2024-esque. And that Colorado team is not as bad as Purdue in 2024.
No.
So yes.
No, they're not.
Very much respect to Kyle Whittingham, but I think it's a battle of legitimacy for both teams. Who are you? And it's going to be a big takeaway. I'm with you.
Yep.
Well, folks,
it's going to be a fun weekend, Trev. There's so many good games on this weekend for Notre Dame, for college football. And you know what? I got to say this at the end. You know what conference we barely talked about this entire time? Big Ten. We talked about 2 Big Ten games this entire time. All the games from Notre Dame and these. And here's why. We talked about USC, Nebraska, and then we talked about Ohio State, Penn State. Am I missing any Big Ten games? It's embarrassing the schedule that the Big Ten has put together for their league. Padding the schedules for the teams that they think are going to be the best, giving them weak schedules, and it also speaks to the mediocrity in the middle and bottom of that league. It is a very top-heavy league, and I'm going through it every week, Trevor, and I'm like, I don't want to be talking about all these SEC games all the time. Let's look and see what the Big Ten slate has. And just week after week, it's garbage. And you and I yesterday went through the rest of the season, and it's garbage. There's no more than 2 good Big Ten games a week. And some of those are rivalry games with Wisconsin and Minnesota, Iowa and Nebraska. It's embarrassing. The Big Ten, the leadership should be embarrassed for the schedules they put together. There's no good football on in the Big Ten, which is sad. It's very sad because there's some good teams in the Big Ten. But Ohio State's schedule is a joke. Not Ohio State's fault. Big Ten puts this together, not Ohio State. Ohio State scheduled Texas in the opener. It's not their fault. It's embarrassing how mediocre the Big Ten is after the first few teams, but more so just how disgusting the schedules are that they put together. Now again, Penn State being down hurts that a little bit. But okay, so then we have USC, Nebraska, and then Penn State at Oklahoma. At Ohio State. What's the rest of the schedule in the Big Ten? Like it really is. It really is embarrassing what they've done. I mean, you've got Rutgers, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, and Michigan. Next week it's you look at the slate in the Big Ten next week, doesn't get a whole lot better, Trev. Northwestern, USC. Indiana, Penn State should have been a good game. Oregon and Iowa, good game. Nebraska, UCLA, Washington, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Purdue, Maryland, and Rutgers. It's just, the next week after that, same deal, right? Minnesota, Oregon, UCLA, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Northwestern, Iowa, USC will be a good one. Purdue at Washington, Penn State at Michigan State should have been a good one. And then Maryland, Illinois. Like, these are terrible games in November. And it's all because the Big Ten is trying to game the system for the playoffs because they want more money. Tony Petitti might be making the Big Ten a lot of money, but he's a disgrace to college football for what he's trying to do to that storied league and what he's trying to do to the game. It's gross. And he should be embarrassed. He won't be, and the presidents won't be because he's making the money, but he should be embarrassed. He's an absolute joke. And the schedule they put together this year, absolute joke. Had to say that before we got out of here.
That's a heck of a way to end the show. Also adds a little bit more context in the Big Ten throwing a hissy fit that not all other teams and all other leagues play 9 conference games either. I'd love to play 9 conference games.
Against that garbage, I'd love to have 9 games against that garbage. The problem for the SEC is when we had a 9th game, it's against a good team.
Yeah, it's and South Carolina.
Our teams are playing each other. Exactly. Yeah. And your top teams are playing each other.
Yeah.
Not this garbage where they just manipulate the schedules to make it, Wisconsin's got to play every good team imaginable, but the top teams don't. So it's an absolute joke. Yep. It's an absolute joke. The leadership in the Big Ten should be ashamed of itself. That includes Tony Petitti. That includes the presidents of the schools, the ADs of the schools. They should all be embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassed with what they are. And I don't blame the coaches. Ryan Day would much rather have a better schedule than that. I knowing Ryan Day, what do you think of him? The same with the AD. They don't schedule tough out of conference for no reason whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
They understand how impactful a schedule that prepares you for the season is. It's an embarrassing. It's an absolute joke. Absolute joke.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end the show, Bryan, and that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Here a little over an hour. The guys are going live tonight on IB Nation Sports Beat. They're covering Marcus Freeman's Zoom press conference that he had today, going over some injury updates, various topics. Bryan and Sean will be back tomorrow to do RTCF, so make sure you guys don't miss that. I'll be traveling out to Boston, so shipping out to Boston, I guess you could say. I'm very excited for that first trip out there. Lauren and I have never been, so here's to hoping for some safe and easy travels. It's going to be a lot of fun. But on your way out of here, folks, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Again, Vince and I are going live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time on the CFP Nation channel for this week's edition of the Spread Option. So if you haven't gotten enough of me today, I'll be going live again at 8 p.m. So make sure you tune in for that one as well. As always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until next time, that's Bryan. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.